Good afternoon, everyone. It's the Los Angeles City Health Commission meeting, Monday, July 10th, 2017. Calling the meeting to order. Clerk will call the roll, please.
Arreola. Avila. Esparza.
Here.
Hisrich.
Here.
Cotto.
Here.
Mendel.
Present.
Shannon.
Here.
Sharp.
Presente.
8 members present and a quorum.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll take up the approval of minutes from the March 13th, 2017 meeting. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second? Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from March 13th, 2017. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Is there anyone here to address us from the Neighborhood Council? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any cards for public comment, so no cards. Okay, so we will move on to item number 1, which is a discussion and/or action on bylaws, including changing the regular meeting time, presented to the Los Angeles City Health Commission by City Attorney Representative Chris Lee. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Lee.
Good afternoon, Madam President and Vice President, Commission members. I circulated the proposed bylaws of the Health Commission, I believe in April of this year, and I hope you had a chance to take a look at it, or at least briefly skim through it. And what I would like to do is to go over each article or each section and ask if there are any questions as to what each one of those sections or articles mean. We can engage in a lot of discussions if you like, and frankly, this is a very standard bylaws that a lot of the commissions have in the city, and something that's unique about this particular bylaws is that in section 2.02, the enumerated purposes and powers is something that is taken directly from the initiative that actually created this commission. And one thing that I actually wanted to correct is section 3.08. I had a benefit of getting an input from Commissioner Sharp, and this commission was created by the initiative, and its members are appointed by the council members. So this commission itself should not be able to remove any of the commission members, but rather it should request, if the commission feels that there's any disinterest commissioners, perhaps the better way to do it is to request the appointing council office to reconsider appointing somebody else in lieu of the person that is not coming to the meetings. So that is one comment that I have about section 3.08. Other than that, I'll go from the top, and it's a relatively short bylaws. Does anybody have any question about Article 1? I think that's pretty routine. And if not, then I would like to move on to section 2.01, general powers. General powers is something that was stated in the initiative, and that is actually adopted by the City Council under section 8.270 of the Admin Code. So, any questions? And any questions about the enumerated purposes and powers?
So I'm guessing this is for 2.02 that you're talking about for the enumerated powers. I know that this is part of the initiative, but this body, this commission, actually took a vote that we would take out the words all, that we would be basically having to have the burden of attending all county meetings. And so the council is still, we're still waiting for the council to agendize that. I'm hoping it'll come up in the next month or two. So it seems like we shouldn't actually be putting that in there at this point until the council has a chance to look at this and decide what action they want to take.
Frankly, I'm not really sure if the council has a power to change the initiative that the people of the city of LA passed.
Actually, that was put on,
Well, you know,
that was a vote
you know,
of the council.
council will do what it will, and you know, I'm just giving you my input based on your question.
Okay.
But in any event, I don't think you should be the one. This commission is the one that should be changing the duties imposed on it by the people. Yes, Mr. Sharp.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the council to take
Okay.
action on that.
Just,
I just wanted to point that out before we put it in our bylaws and then have to change it.
Bylaws can always be changed easily by agendizing it. So,
Section 7 of the ordinance says, "This measure may be amended to further its purpose by ordinance passed by a two-thirds vote of the city council and signed by the mayor of the city, after at least 30 days' notice has been provided to the commission." So I think it is in the initial ordinance that the council retains the authority.
okay. I don't have the ordinance with me today, but I'll take your word for it. So I'm moving on to Section 301, the membership. Basically says that you have no liabilities for dues or assessments. And I think you might want to think about who your secretary is going to be, whether it's going to be the clerk's office, or if you want to have an officer that you guys will appoint. And the number of members is 15, as you all know. And Section 304, members are appointed by the council officers. And your term is 1 year, but you will serve until your successors are appointed. And the vacancies are filled by the appointing council members. And 3.07, attendance is something that I'm suggesting, but that is something that you as the commission want to think about as to how you want to approach the commissioners who don't frequent the meetings. And same thing, I already made my comment about 3.08. And 3.09, any commissioner, any member can resign. And officers, again, everything that's in here is a suggestion based on routine commission meetings that we have in the city. So you are free to add, delete the number of offices. And current structure that I'm proposing is to have the president, vice presidents, and secretary, and treasurer, because I know that this commission has some question about financial affairs, and it's really up to you as to how you want to structure it.
Mr. Lee, could I ask you a few questions about some of the sections that we've gone over?
Okay.
On membership, you write, the commission is composed of 15 members.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we can change that to say that membership are the filled seats. So that when we have a vacancy, my concern is that due to inaction by the council, we could slip below quorum, which means that we could just never have a meeting at that point. And so I've looked up, and there's a precedent for both considering members as the number of seats that can be filled, but there's also precedent, and particularly in the third edition that I saw of Robert's Rules of Order, for
What
it
edition
being,
did you say?
the third edition of Robert's Rules of Order, there is a precedent for it's also saying that it's And for some reason, it's not in the new edition. So I think that people obviously interpret it different ways.
Right.
But in the third edition, it does say that it's the filled seats. And I know that I've seen that there are counties and cities who do it, both ways. But I'm wondering if for the purposes of the commission, since we don't have authority over filling the vacancies, and I know that there's an argument to be made where if a body can actually fill the vacancies, it's their duty to do that. In our case, though, we don't have that duty, and we don't have that authority. And so we could actually slip below quorum and just not be able to meet for months and months and months.
I understand that part, and I think what you're really talking about is a quorum. And that is something that you can define as the commission. If you want to decide the quorum would be the majority of the filled seats as opposed to the entire prescribed membership, then there will be your prerogative as the commission. So if you want to have 6 for the evening like today, and as long as you define it that way, then you should be fine. You're not precluded from making that definition.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And just like any other commission, you're free to have some committees, but in Article 5. However, there are some considerations that needs to be given because you do not want to have a situation where you have more than the majority of the, where you have majority or a greater number of the people who are in a commission or who are in a committee that's going to decide on some material issues, because that could infringe on the Brown Act. And I think Article 6 voting is rather simple. One person vote, one vote. So if you want to have 6.02 is where you can actually make changes with respect to the quorum. And if you want to say instead of a quorum of the commission shall be the majority of their respective membership, if you want to say filled positions, then I think that might be something that you might want to consider.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
And not to be immune, but is the definition of majority one more than half?
We usually say 1/2 plus 1 because there are times that becomes a little bit tricky. For example, let's say you have 5, and it's and when you say majority, then it would be 3. However, when you say 1/2 plus 1, then it becomes 4. So it's something that you might want to consider and decide on whether which one you want to adopt as a definition.
I like to say 50%, because if there was 10, then majority by definition would be 6. And as you've pointed out,
Right.
50% plus 1 is 6.
Right.
And we've had situations where we drove out to the valley, and I think at that time 7 of us spent over 2 hours in traffic, and one person got tied up in traffic. We had to cancel a meeting because even though she was well-intentioned, she was coming from the South Bay, and after 2 hours she just gave up. So if we can, as long as we're going through this process, if we could change it to 50%, which would be prudent and reasonable, then if for some reason the numbers of active members drop down to 10, which I appear it is what it is now, then 5 individuals would be more than enough to maintain our business.
Well, I think that is actually entirely up to you as to what number should be the quorum. And for example, for the city council, no matter what, we have to have at least 10 people. What you want to avoid is to have too small a number of people deciding on behalf of the entire commission. For example, let's say we were to have 5 people as a quorum, then 3 people will be deciding on behalf of the 15 members. So, but that is your prerogative again. So it'll be up to you.
Okay.
Conflict of interest, 6.03. This usually has something to do with your financial gain, indirectly or directly, from your activities as a commission member. But since this is an advisory commission, I really don't see a whole lot of conflict issues. But I think it's really up to you to decide, what is really in conflict of interest for yourself, because you know your own situation better than anybody else. And 7.01 basically states that the meetings are subject to the Brown Act. And 7.02, I put down the regular meeting time as Monday at 6 p.m. Because I think some time back there was discussion about whether it's more convenient to have it at 5 or 6 o'clock, and for some reason 6 o'clock stuck in my mind, but it's up to you to change that if you want. And 7.03, I put down annual meetings because all other commissions, although this is a unique commission, all other commissions of the city under admin code is required to have an election in July. I think it's been more than a year since we had an election of this commission. So just to be consistent with other commissions, I put July as the month of the year where you would have election. But sometimes if you don't have a meeting in July, or if you miss it, then you can have the election the next month, but it needs to be agendized. And special meetings. This is a big one because I know President Shannon is concerned about this issue because Robert's Rules of Order did not allow for special meetings unless we had separate bylaws, and I think this provision will enable you to have special meetings and have retreats and stuff like that. And advanced meeting notice on the section 7.05 is basically a 3-day requirement for the regular meeting and 1-day requirement for special meeting. And adjournment, meetings can be adjourned without having a quorum. And amendments, the bylaws can be amended by the commission.
May I ask a question?
Shannon?
On the special meetings, now it specifies 5 here. If we change the quorum requirement, then presumably it'd have to be a smaller number in the special meetings. If there's only 10 appointed, for example, and 5 or 6 is determined to be a quorum, then we couldn't have that many at a special meeting, could we?
Oh, it's really up to you as to how many members can call for a special meeting. That provision is there just in case. Let's say there's a small dissenting number of commissioners who want to have a special meeting called, and you don't want to have just one person being able to call the special meeting without getting consent from other people. I think you want to have some consensus to have a special meeting.
So
But it's really up to you as to how many commissioners should be able to call the meeting.
Well, if a quorum is determined, that we decide that the quorum is 6, if we had 5, it wouldn't be considered a meeting that would be a publicly full meeting of the whole thing, I guess.
No, that number 5 refers to the number of people who can call the meeting rather than...
Scheduling.
I see.
That's to schedule in the future.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
okay, all right.
Just as a point of clarification, in regards to adjournment, if we lose quorum,
Yes.
can we maintain and keep doing business if we had quorum at the beginning?
You may not act on any action item when you lose a quorum.
But we can,
But you could have discussion.
so we have a discussion or presentations from outside presenters.
Correct.
But we just can't, that's fine, okay.
And in the absence of the provision, if something happens that's not covered by the bylaws, then we have adopted the Robert's Rules of Order. And it is under, I think the newest edition is 11th edition, and I don't have access to the 11th, I only have the 10th. And 902 refers to the fact that bylaws does not take precedence over other laws. And 903, the commission can choose to have insurance or other indemnification. That's about it.
Great, thank you so much for doing all this work. So Commissioner, I'd like to have discussion on this. One of the things I was counseled on by City Attorney Noreen Vincent was that we could look at these bylaws more closely in terms of changing language or some of the sections, depending on the policies we'd like to adopt, but that we can take up certain sections today that we absolutely need. One of which I would say is Section 7.04 for special meetings. We found out, I guess a few months ago, that we can't actually have a retreat without us adopting a special meetings rule through our commission. So Ms. Vincent recommended that we at least pass this section so we can have a retreat to more thoroughly go over the bylaws, which I think is actually a fairly good idea. I would also probably add to that, and again, we'll discuss this, is maybe going over quorum and maybe passing that as well to make our quorum a majority of the filled position so that we're not prevented from meeting. Because particularly for the retreat, I think it's important that we're able to at least meet and go over this and decide our course of action moving forward. And I'm trying to see if there's another section that... Okay, so thoughts on that or discussion?
Well, Commissioner Sharp has other suggestions. I don't know if you want to bring them up before we...
The first topic, though, I think Commissioner President Shan brought up is whether to act on a reduced number of bylaws. In advance of discussing some other suggestions, I think that's the topic on the table right now.
Right, exactly. Because we can go over, we can add to this, obviously, we can change language, we can decide we want a different policy in some of these sections, which I think is a much longer conversation and may be appropriate for the retreat. But I do think we definitely should not get out of here with at least having a vote on special meetings, whatever that vote is, in order for us to at least have the retreat so that we can have more in-depth discussions.
And we could do that before... We haven't adopted bylaws for a commission, correct?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and typically, sometimes there'll be several readings of bylaws before you actually adopt all of them, but we can take them section by section just to make sure that we can continue conducting business. That's my main concern, is that we haven't been able to have a retreat because we don't have a provision for that, for a special meeting, and we sometimes haven't been able to make quorum due to the inaction of the city council.
On that, if I may comment on it a little bit. According to the agenda, this item, Section 704 is not what's on the agenda. What's on the agenda is the bylaws. What I would recommend is that if there's going to be a motion to amend the bylaws and then pass a few of the sections and then defer it or reject some of them until a later time. That way we are consistent with the agenda and then we'll comply with the Brown Act.
Right, yeah, if we can defer sections of the bylaws to the actual retreat.
Why would we do that when we have the opportunity to work through them here today?
Well, because I think there are a lot of issues, and there's a lot of language that I think may need to be changed here.
That's what
That could take hours, and
Oh, it
if we're
shouldn't take
devoting an entire day to a retreat, it just seems like we would have more time to discuss all of these issues.
I don't think there's hours of discussion about it, but I'm happy to hear what the range of issues are. There are 2 or 3 fairly minor suggestions I've got to share. I don't know how many suggestions others have to share. I'm not familiar with the range of details that might require hours. I entirely agree that it would be great to leave today with the enacted provision to enable the retreat. I don't see that in conflict with adopting the entire bylaws this afternoon.
Okay, any thoughts, comments?
I agree with Commissioner Sharp.
Okay, Commissioner Mandel?
I'd agree with Commissioner Sharp.
I do have a hard time seeing what would take hours of discussion, in all honesty. I mean, there's a few things, but not really much that of this, that would take hours and hours.
Okay, all right, so people want to hash this out now for our bylaws?
We're trying to, at least, yeah.
I would agree.
Okay.
I think they're very standard language here as well, too, and there's no reason for us to just not move forward with this.
Okay, all right, so should we take this section by section then?
Sure.
Okay, so I would recommend that we not take up section 2.02. This commission actually voted that we not have to attend all of the county meetings, and we're still waiting for the city council to take this up. So I don't see a point of putting this in our bylaws if we already know that this is something that we're going to ask the council to take action on. So maybe we defer that to the retreat and see if we can get a vote of the council between now and whatever date we decide on for the retreat.
The reason that I propose, in addition to section 2.02, is because I think that in the process of recruiting additional commissioners from the council offices that are yet to appoint and or onboarding and training, it's important to have a clear enumerated purpose. And I think the bylaws is a place to do it, not the only place. A retreat would be a great place to convert the purpose into an annual work plan and other levels of detail, but I think it's valuable to agree as part of the bylaws framework in what is the enumerated purpose. And per the January discussion regarding what we might do this year, I added a sentence to reflect the discussion recommendation I made at that point, which is in our minutes from that meeting, and just added it as a potential additional source of input for the commission to select annual priorities from. So my suggestion would be we make this part of the bylaws and additionally work through what the implications are for any particular year's work at the retreat. So a yes and on 2.02.
Okay, are you including section 1 on that, Commissioner Sharp? Where the commission attends all county meetings?
Entirely agree
Because
with
we
you that that's
actually
an
voted.
important edit that ought to be incorporated in the bylaws. I agree. That striking of the first word in the second sentence, all, was an action that was taken here and ought to be correctly captured in the bylaws. So that's a great catch on your part.
The other, if I may, President Shannon, you could also change the first word in that subparagraph from cause one or more to encourage. So you have 2 areas. You have encourage people going and get rid of all. which basically is what the council originally wanted us to do anyway.
Is there any dissenting opinion on that? Okay, I would agree with that. And then we're deleting the word all in
Number 1.
number 1. Let's see, let me find that. All, okay. Okay, so people understand the changes that we just, okay. All right, so should we vote on sections 2.01 and 2.02 given the amendments? Also, I'm not sure, can we add Commissioner Sharp's language if it hasn't been noticed?
Well, I don't think there is any problem with adding it because it's, we're still discussing the bylaws.
Okay, so we can add language,
Yes.
even if it hasn't been noticed. Okay, so just for the purposes of people listening at home or at work, we're adding to section 5, or discussing adding this, solicit input from mayor, city council member, city attorney, and city controller regarding important health challenges facing Los Angeles residents that the commission might assist with by analyzing data, convening experts and stakeholders, and/or formulating recommendations. Is there any discussion on that? I think my only concern here is I'm not sure we have the expertise to be analyzing data. So if you could explain that.
We don't.
Commissioner Sharp.
I would agree. I was just trying to list a menu of ways that different city commissions approach problems. I took that from another commission I'm on. I fully acknowledge that we don't have the capacity, and I can't foresee when we would. It's just one of ways to try and illustrate to city leaders how we might, in an abstract sense, I guess, help assess the problems that they would bring to us. If that raises an expectation that is unlikely to be met, I'm happy to see that language deleted if it makes everyone more comfortable that it's a more realistic proposal.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that? So we would be deleting by analyzing data? It's something that we could do if we can do it. That's great, but as Commissioner Sharp says, I don't want to put that out there as the expectation that we can do that. Okay, or that we will be doing that.
I was going to make a comment. I guess it depends on what you mean by analyzing data. I think some of us have expertise. I mean, I have a master's degree in public health. I understand EPI. I could read a chart and understand it and be able to interpret, but I don't know to what extent you mean by analyzing data. Maybe change the wording to maybe be a little broader, if that helps. I mean, we certainly do need data to understand health trends.
Maybe it's analyzing information.
So maybe it could be reworded.
Rather than taken out, you mean?
I was just thinking over the 3 functions that I think have happened. One is people have brought information to us. The second is we've invited people to present expertise. And the third is we've attempted to formulate recommendations. And I acknowledge that data may have been the wrong word for the kind of first set of activities.
Okay, so are there suggestions on changing the language or deleting it?
I'm not opposed to removing it, but I guess for me, I'm comfortable with the phrasing, so it doesn't matter, but I think it is important, but I'm okay with it being removed.
It's also saying assist with, it's not like we're taking the responsibility of doing it. Yeah, maybe we could reword it in a way where there's no expectation that we're the body that's going to analyze the data, but I agree with Commissioner Vick that, we can't avoid not looking at data.
Could we change it to something like reviewing information, so it's not making it seem as though we're doing an actual analysis?
Reviewing data and information, something like that.
Okay. Are people open to changing it to reviewing data information?
Yeah.
Does that sound good? Okay.
Professor?
Okay, unless there's a dissenting opinion, I'm going to say that we've got consensus on this. Okay, so can we at least pass the sections that we've gone over at this point? And can I get a motion for that? We'll go over all the other sections as well. I just don't want to get lost in terms of the changes. So if we can get a motion to pass Article 1, Article 2, and also take up, just in the interest of time, Section 7.04 for special meetings. Can I get a motion for that? And then we'll go through the other sections.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and this is to pass Article 1, Article 2, and Section 7.04 for special meetings. Any
Passed
discussion?
as amended, right? Because we
Passed as amended.
As amended.
The amendments being, and let me run over the amendments.
Just
really
a quick
quickly.
question. Who moved and who second? Moved
No,
and
I was
second.
second.
Okay, thank you.
So we're willing to do first.
Okay, the changes will be Section 2.02, number 1, we're changing the first word to encourage. So encourage one or more commission members or commissioners, et cetera, and then to attend, and we're deleting the word all, so that Section 1 is changed. I'm sorry, let me repeat that. Section 2.02, enumerated purposes and powers, number 1, is changed for those two. And in Section 4, after Section 4, we're adding Section 5 to read, solicit input from mayor, city council members, city attorney, and city controller regarding important health challenges facing Los Angeles residents that the commission might assist with reviewing data information, convening experts and stakeholders, and/or formulating recommendations. I just want to make that very clear for whoever is writing the notes to the clerk's office.
Can I
And then add in,
to that? Yeah, plan for a healthy LA, isn't that under city planning? Not city controller. Can that be added?
The city planning department is a department under the purview of the mayor.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh,
yeah, so all of the departments would be under mayor.
all right.
Okay, and then we're also voting on Section 7.0 for special meetings. And this is
As written.
as written. Are there any changes in Section 7.04 before we vote on that? So it would be the commission president or any 5 members of the commission, provided the notice of the meeting is posted in accordance with the Brown Act, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, okay. All right, great. So that has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. So that passes. Okay, next section. Okay, membership. Section 3.01, general. Okay, so in this section, also in Section 1, it does mention the commission secretary, but we haven't actually voted to create a commission secretary. And that's something that I think we do need to talk about. I'm not sure that, and this is something for the city attorney's office, if the clerk can actually be an officer of a commission. If clerk, because I know you were saying before, do we want to make the clerk the secretary? But
I think the clerk's office has been acting as the secretary for the commission thus far, and I think it can continue to do so without having a separate secretary appointed as an officer. But it's really up to the commission to decide how you want to operate it.
okay, so if we could jump forward actually to commission officers and look at the secretary position. My only concern about this particular position is that the clerk's office is responsible for these duties. or many of the duties, or hasn't been acting in that capacity. So the question is whether or not we want to create this position, and what the point of that would be.
So is the city clerk's office acting on it by default because we don't have a secretary?
Well, okay, so, one issue here is that, okay, I think it says that they will serve notice. Let's see,
Yeah.
But I don't think they're allowed to serve notice if they're a member of this commission because of the Brown Act, right? So we can't, is that correct?
Well, I think the reason that I even contemplated on this particular position is because I know there were some issues with respect to you receiving emails or not having received it, or and stuff like that. And I just wanted to make sure that there's a comfortable way for you to communicate with each other. And if there's a secretary, there's nothing wrong with having a secretary who's a member of this commission. It does not by itself violate the Brown Act.
But can that secretary be sending emails back and forth to more than a majority of the members?
Sending out notices is not a violation of the Brown Act.
It seems to me, for simplicity's sake, to find a way to formalize in the bylaws the current functions that the clerk's office is performing is just most likely the least burdensome, as opposed to imposing a new set of obligations on someone sitting around the table here today that are predominantly within the skill set and capacity of the current clerk's team. In the other city commission that I serve on, the secretary functions are, for practical purposes, handled by the executive secretary within that department. So given this commission does not have a city department relationship, it's going to be a burden absorbed by one of the volunteers here. And I would, encourage everyone to avoid burdening each other with additional burdens.
I still think that whether we have a secretary or not, and I don't feel strongly one way or the other, the clerk could still do minutes and do what she has been doing beautifully over the last year and a half. And if we didn't have a secretary, that would still function. And if we had a secretary, all the secretary would be one individual of the entire body who would, in fact, do that function by reviewing it beforehand so to make sure that it's accurate. And I think, that's what other, not-for-profit boards or governmental entities sometimes will do also. As a physician in my office, I have my nurses do things for me all the time under my supervision, and that's legal and reasonable and prudent, and it works very well.
So if that were the case, and we were to take up Commissioner Mandel's suggestion, we should at least change or somehow amend the duties of the secretary here. Because here, it's the keeper of the minutes, which is fine. And maybe I'll just read through this. The commission secretary shall certify and keep these original bylaws as amended or otherwise altered to date. Keep the minutes of all meetings of the commission, including authorization of special meetings, attendance, number of members present, and the official proceedings of the commission. See that all advance notices are duly given in accordance with the bylaws. So that is something that I think the clerk is doing at this point, or as required by law. Be custodian of the official corporate records and its seal as applicable. We don't actually have a seal. I'm guessing we just use the seal of the city of Los Angeles without that. But I think the clerk also would keep that as well. Exhibit at all reasonable times to any member or to the member's agent or attorney on request thereof any documents or records which by law the public has a right to see, and in general perform all the duties of the office of secretary and such other duties as from time to time may be assigned to the secretary by the commission president. So I would feel comfortable maybe deleting the part here which says,
May I suggest something?
yes,
I
Commissioner
don't believe
Esparza.
Robert's rules require us to have a secretary. So I would be in favor of just striking 4.06 from our bylaws, since the city clerk is assuming many of those duties already anyway.
Okay.
I would
Commissioner
concur.
Potter.
I would concur. It just seems to complicate
Yeah.
it more, and it's going to put a burden on somebody to do this. And it's being functional currently through the city clerk, so I would concur with that. Commissioner Esperanza.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, so Commissioner Esparza, did you want to make that a motion?
I move that we strike 4.06 from the bylaws.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to strike section 4.06, creating a secretary position for officers. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we're striking section 4.06 secretary. Okay, so unfortunately now we have to go back to Article 1.
Right.
And Article 1 says, first of all, I think someone who was on the prevailing side of the motion to pass it needs to make a reconsideration motion so that we can, okay, so it says in the last sentence, it says the commission may change the principal office from one location to another. Any change of this location shall be noted by, and it says the commission secretary. So I think we would have to say the clerk of the city of Los Angeles, or just the city clerk, on these bylaws, opposite this section, or this section may be amended to state the new location.
So I move that we
So-
reconsider the motion that was made in favor of Article 1 to enable us to reopen and discuss the proposed amendment from President Shannon.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to amend Article 1. I have a question for the city attorney's office. When it says a transaction of business, that doesn't also mean where our commission meetings are held, correct?
Well, yes and no, in that most of the times you conduct your meetings in this chamber, but you actually do have a right to hold meetings elsewhere with the appropriate notice, like we've done before, within the parameters, like within the city of LA, ADA compliance issues and stuff. But this language does not prevent you from doing anything like that, if that was your question.
Right, because we've had meetings off-site, and so when I'm reading this, which I hadn't thought of before, it just says, a change of this location shall be noted, we could say by the city clerk on these bylaws opposite this section.
The change of the permanent principal place of business. I think
Okay.
you have to have a location which is a principal place of business.
Yeah.
And that's the city hall. Right?
That's how I'd interpreted
Right.
it to begin with, like where records are kept and where people would send
Right.
any kind of correspondence and that kind of thing. Okay, great. You don't think, though, that it can be interpreted to mean where our commission meetings are held? Okay. Okay, great. So, so there's a motion to reopen this. So do I have a motion now to change the commission secretary to the city clerk? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Commissioner Hisrich. Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of changing in Article 1, from noted by the commission secretary to noted by the city clerk, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. So I have to be very clear on this because when they're writing the notes, we have to make sure that we're exact in terms of how we're doing this. Okay.
I have a question. just for the sake of efficiency, can we make a motion to amend anywhere where there's reference to a commission secretary to just change all the wording to city clerk? And that, just do it in one fell swoop?
It's, as long as it makes grammatical sense, I'd be okay with that. I think it's only mentioned, not sure where else it's
It's
mentioned.
mentioned in, I'm sorry, I just, where is that?
Mentions
Yes, it's mentioned in
3.07,
4.01.
3.07.
It's mentioned in, okay, so it's mentioned 4.01, so we would delete, actually, in that case, we would delete it. You know, I think actually, I mean, I understand the intent of wanting to do that, just in the interest of saving time, but in this particular section, we wouldn't want to put city clerk. We would just want to delete secretary, because it wouldn't be one of the officers.
Okay. Well, but
Okay.
3.07, for example,
Yeah, 3.07.
has, mentions the secretary.
My
commission-
only, okay, so my only reservations on this is that the clerk is going to have to listen back on this to make sure all the changes are made. And I kind of feel like if we're not going section by section and doing it, it might get confusing. I understand, I understand what you want to do. I'm just concerned that
That's
something
fine.
might get missed or it's not clear. Because I know that we've had that in the past where a motion that we took was not clear. And
Okay.
it was open to interpretation.
I'm fine.
Okay, so, section 3.01, membership. The members of the commission shall have no liability for dues or assessments. The rights and privileges of all members shall be equal. The secretary shall maintain as part of the commission records. So we want to change that to the city clerk.
All right.
Shall maintain as part of the commission records a current listing of the commission members and their tenures, committee assignments, addresses, and telephone numbers. To this section, I would add an appointing officer.
Appointing officer or appointing council
Appointing
office?
council member. Sorry, thank you. An appointing council member. Okay, so can we get a motion to change the word secretary and to add an appointing council member to the list?
So moved.
Things. It's been moved and seconded to amend 3.01, changing the word the secretary to the city clerk and adding an appointing council member. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. All right, section 3.02. So this was one of the sections that we wanted to well, I mean, if we're rethinking quorum, I guess it isn't,
I think you want to address the quorum issues in section 4.02.
and just leave this how it is, just to
Right.
say the commission is, yeah, because if we're not using Robert's Rules of Order and we're just going by our bylaws, then it's not an issue.
Right.
But it is if we're using Roberts, right? Okay. Okay, so, let's see. Pass this. Okay, so leaving.
Leave
as-
as is that what you're saying? for
Yeah,
3.02?
we're saying leaving as it.
Okay.
So just so that you know, there's just a question of whether the membership means the number of seats filled or if membership also includes vacancies. And it's interpreted both ways. Throughout the country, it's interpreted different ways in different government bodies. Okay, so section 3.04, is everyone okay? Is there any motions that anyone wants to make with 3.02? Okay. Maybe we could take a few sections. I'm going to move on to 3.04, appointing members. Each member of city council shall appoint one member of the commission who shall serve as commission member without compensation.
That's fine.
Okay. If there's any questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, I'll go on to 3.05. The term of the members shall be 1 year, commencing July 1st of the year of appointment, and until their successors are duly appointed, vacancies shall be filled at the annual membership meeting of the commission, each member, including a member appointed to fill a vacancy, shall hold office until expiration of the term for which appointed on until a successor has been appointed. Okay, Commissioner Sharp.
To follow with your earlier theme about how to try and make it as efficient as possible in light of vacancies, my suggestion would be to delete the second sentence about vacancies being filled at the annual meeting of the commission. I think the bylaws ought to remain silent on that so that vacancies can be filled as soon as possible and not delayed till the annual meeting. So I think that sentence, my suggestion would be to delete it. I don't think we need that sentence. I think vacancies would be filled. My understanding from a practical standpoint is as soon as a letter from a council office arrives at city clerk.
Right,
The next
and-
commission
So-
meeting after that.
And 3.06 also discusses how it can be filled whenever it's vacant, so.
Yeah, I wasn't interpreting this as saying you can't fill the vacancy until the annual meeting. I was interpreting this to say that the member who fills the vacancy is filling the vacancy up until the term that, as it would have expired for the original appointee. So in other words, when Bill Rosendahl created a vacancy, the term of the person who came in after Bill would have been serving until that term was over.
That's clear in the next sentence. I agree. I just think the middle sentence is the one that's extraneous.
Could I clarify a word too?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Hisarich?
Yeah, in 3.05, it says, "Shall hold office until expiration of the term for which appointed on." Isn't that supposed to be or? Or until a successor has been appointed? Huh?
I was going to mention it.
Yeah, it's or, I believe. But in a sense, the way I read that is that the term expires in July. I mean,
Right,
does-
and really, our term started in November, if you remember.
Well, okay, well, then it ends then, but I mean, it doesn't say that you continue to sit. It says that your term expires.
And until the successors are duly appointed. The first sentence it does.
Yeah, that was a typo, that should have been or.
It should be or instead of and.
Right,
Okay, so we want to
but-
change that to or. And then, do we feel comfortable with July 1st being the annual meeting? I think some of us, most of us here were appointed, I think, in November, our first meeting being toward the middle of November, if I remember correctly.
I'm still trying to clarify one thing here. It says, "Shall hold office until expiration of the term for which appointed." They were appointed for a one-year term. Now, if you can put language that says, "continue to serve until replaced," or something like that, but the way this reads, even though the "or" is there, it says, "complete the term for which you're appointed."
Okay, so recommendations to modify this?
I'm trying to figure out one.
My recommendation
Okay,
would be that we
let's
only
think about
use
it.
the first sentence in this section. I think the second and third sentences are adding confusion and not value. Reread it just using the first sentence.
Yeah, the first sentence is clear. It's 1 year, and it continues until duly appointed,
That's all
be
we
filled.
need in section 3.05.
Till the expiration of the term.
Although I don't know if I would agree with that, because it does need to be clear that the new member who is appointed, who's filling a vacancy, is filling that vacancy until the time of expiration or until,
That's in 3.06.
oh, I see, okay.
I'm not disagreeing with the point, I'm just saying I think it's redundant.
It's actually not in there unless it's, no. So it doesn't say that it's only filling up until the expiration date of the vacancy, right? So if I'm a new member coming in, I'm filling a vacancy, I'm only filling that vacancy up until the expiration of the term or until So it needs to be clear that my term ends at the time of the member who I'm replacing.
I think that, and we could, have our legal scholars clarify. I think that is implied by that once someone is appointed, the section 3.05 applies. So once they're a member, the first sentence of 3.05 applies. It wouldn't matter the genesis of the appointment, either as an initial or a vacancy appointment.
Well, it would, because there are people who are coming in to fill vacancies who think that they're appointed now for a year, whereas it might be 3 months, just to fill the rest of the term for the person whose place they've taken. Commissioner Mandel.
An alternative would be to say that instead of the term of members, term of office, the term of members, instead of saying that, just say members serve at the pleasure of the council member who appointed them, which could be a year or for perpetuity.
It could be indefinite amount of time.
Well, for the 10 of us that still exist, it's been an indefinite period of time because we were the original appointees and we're still here. And I think any of us, with all due respect to the council member who appointed us, if that council member lost an election, then the new council member, more likely than not, would want to appoint their own person. And if not, I haven't seen any of the council members calling us and asking us to step down. So I mean, that would be a way to handle it, and then we don't have to put time limits in it. It is what it is, and at some point in time, we either resign or the council member says, hey, I have somebody who'd be really good for that. You're getting a little stale.
Okay, so the actual, the initiative actually stated that our terms were 1 year, which is why I'm sure this was put in here by the city attorney's office. So, Mr. Lee, would you like to respond to that?
I think I agree with Commissioner Sharp's opinion that we should strike the remaining paragraph of Section 305 after the first sentence. Perhaps the way to clean it up is to add at the end of the end of Section 306 after the second sentence, which will read something along this line. In all such appointments, the new member shall represent the same constituency as the initial member for the remaining term of the vacancy, or something along that line.
Position would be a better word.
Right.
And then it would have to be the or, right, so we'd have to put the same sentence there, or until
Well, I don't think we need to
their
actually
successors are
go there
duly appointed?
because that remaining term would be actually covered by the initial sentence, which says that that person will serve until a new successor is appointed. Right? So I think the idea is to, I think the concern you had was to make sure that the person who's replacing, or the person who's filling the vacancy only serves the time that's remaining by the vacancy, or until the new person is appointed to replace that person, right?
Could we say represent the same constituency as the initial member and be subject to Section 3.05 so that it's clear that the member who is basically filling the vacancy doesn't have separate rules from 3.05? In other words, if we say that the term ends, it makes it seem as though we have a different set of rules for
that works for me if that makes it clearer for you.
Yeah, just to say, and be subject to Section 3.05, just to make it very clear so that it can't be interpreted as anything other than that and separate rules for somebody coming in to fill a vacancy. What do people think about that? Commissioner Cotto?
Can you read the whole thing as it would be written so I can?
Okay, so we're talking about taking out, okay, my understanding is that for Section 3.05, we would take out the second sentence that says vacancies shall be filled at the annual meeting of the commission, and take out each member, including a member appointed to fill a vacancy, shall hold office until expiration of the term for which appointed or until a successor has been appointed, since that's covered in the first sentence. And then in section 3.06, it would read, vacancies in membership, whether the result of removal or resignation, shall be filled by the appropriate council members. In all such appointments, the new member shall represent the same constituency as the initial member and be subject to section 3.05, so that we're not leaving the impression or potential misinterpretation in the future that a member coming in filling a vacancy is under separate rules than someone under 3.05. Does that make sense?
Yes, clear.
Okay. Are there any different opinions to that?
Need a motion?
I'll make the motion to pass as amended.
Okay, so just to be clear, for section 3.05, we are amending it to take out the sentence starting with vacancies. We are extracting vacancies shall be filled at the annual meeting of the commission, and taking out each member, including a member appointed to fill a vacancy, shall hold office until expiration of the term for which appointed or until a successor has been appointed. So we're only leaving the first sentence of section 3.05 term of service of office. Section 3.06, we are changing to say vacancies in membership. We're changing it to add and be subject to section 3.05 at the very end of that sentence. Okay, so do we have a motion for that? And a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, so we'll be taking up, okay, so let's take up the changes here, and then we have to go back and do 3.02 and 3.04. Okay, so all in favor of these amendments to section 3.05 and 3.06, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so section 3.05 and 3.06 have been amended and passed. Now we have to go back and do 3.02, number of members, and 3.04, for which no one seemed to have a problem.
Excuse me, Commissioner, I wasn't able to hear who moved and
Oh,
second.
who moved and seconded for the last? Commissioner Cotto, and
I second.
the second was John,
Thank you.
Commissioner Hisarich. We're getting several seconds, so we'll pick one.
Okay.
Okay, so now if we can entertain a motion for section 3.02 and 3.04, 3.02 being number of members and 3.04 being appointment of members.
I'll move that, but, I'm sorry, is there no section 3.03?
No, there's not.
So why don't we move them all up? So as long as we're moving for the approval of section 3.02 and 3.04, I would move that we accept section 3.02, we change 3.04 to 3.03 and accept as stated, move section 3.05, term of office, to 3.04, vacancies becomes .05, attendance 06, and removal of members 07, and resignations 08.
Okay, I just want to get the advice of the city clerk. Is it easier for us to go through this section by section to make the changes, and then at the end of Article 3, we'll vote to move the numbers up, just so that it's consistent when you're listening to the audio to make the... Is there any way we could do that at the end of Section 3? Okay, just so that we know what sections now that we're looking at, and then at the end of Section 3, we can entertain the motion to move the numbers up, just so that we're not confusing the clerk as she's making changes. Okay, I'm just...
I'll move to accept as written section 3.02, number of members, and section 3.04, appointment of members.
Okay, and do we have a second for that? Okay, it's been moved and seconded for sections 3.02 and 3.04. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Great, so that passes. Okay, 3.07. this is to say that commission members are expected to attend commission meetings and other committee meetings to which they've been assigned. The commission members will be counted as absent if they are not present at commission meetings.
We have to add
Actually,
if.
we have to, yeah, if or when, we need to add into that sentence. The commission members will be counted as absent if they are not present. So we'll make a motion for that later. The commission members who miss 2 consecutive meetings within a calendar year may be considered inactive and subject to removal pursuant to section 3.08. The commission secretary should be responsible for recording commission member attendance. Okay, so obviously the commission secretary needs to be changed to the city clerk in the last sentence. So let's have a discussion on the 2 consecutive meetings. Is there any discussion on that? Do you think that might be too low a number, or?
I think my first impression was that that was too low. But that was just kind of my first thing.
Yeah, that was my impression too, just because you could be on vacation for 4.5 weeks and miss 2 meetings over the summer. Any other discussion?
I have a question. There's several members that appear to not be members anymore. Did they all resign on their own, or were some of those excluded under one of these provisions?
I think, so that we don't, okay, so one thing is that we can't put a provision on the council members. We can just make a suggestion. And some were taken off because of lack of attendance. And it was basically just the council member just saying, can you attend these meetings? And they couldn't. It was just a conversation. It's not like a removal. I think it was just an agreement between the council member and the commissioner. So this, I mean, basically, I think what they're saying here, and the city attorney's office can correct me if I'm wrong, is just to say that at the 2 consecutive meetings being absent, that would trigger a conversation between maybe the president of the commission and a city council member. Some of the council members are friends of mine. I don't think they would think missing 2 meetings consecutively would necessarily lead them to think that someone should be removed. But it's their prerogative to remove someone. It's not ours. It's just a question of when it would trigger a conversation with the council member's office, just to ensure that we can maintain quorum and that kind of thing. I kind of think 2 is too low. I think, because I've had to have these conversations with council members or their offices, and I think if I said, oh, they missed, July and August or something, it just, I don't know, it wouldn't seem like it was.
Words like unexcused or something like that, or excuse, somebody in advance. Council members do that. They vote they're not going to be here.
Yeah, and they miss
excuse.
committee meetings too.
I don't
Commissioner
think-
Sharp?
I'm not sure that the council's our gold standard on attendance. But I offer this. I think we're in a similar situation we were on the previous page, where there's 2 sections that have related provisions, and my suggestion is to tighten each to just the subject matter under its title, and I think it'll make it a nudge earlier. So for section 3.07, I think we delete the 3rd sentence about the 2 consecutive meetings, and then we address the issues around removal in the next section. And I have a thought on that. But the first thought is to simply define that there's an expectation for attendance, that people are counted as absent if they're not present, and that the city clerk is responsible for recording the member attendance. I think those are the issues to be adopted in the bylaw under attendance. Then separately, I'd love to talk about and hear suggestions around how to maintain an active group. But I think that's section 308. And just like the previous thing, we have 2 related things. Let's try and put them in separate sections. So that's my proposal.
Okay, so I would agree that these are sort of 2 separate issues. However, I think we should talk about 3.08 before modifying 3.07, because I would actually probably move to remove 3.08, because I feel like we don't have the power for removal, and I feel like this could potentially be an affront to some city council members, even to have a section here that says removal of members, which is not in any way, shape, or form under our authority. So,
So then if we're not talking about 307 anymore, I made my suggestion for 307, which is we eliminate the third sentence. For section 30.08, my suggestion is that the 2 consecutive be replaced with 3 in a calendar year, which triggers a request to the council office to appoint a replacement. The council can retain, as you point out, they have the authority to retain their current appointee, or they could send another appointee. That's how it's being done in the neighborhood council world to avoid the discretionary challenge that Commissioner Historick just raised regarding excused or unexcused. A source of great friction in the neighborhood council world has been the perception of unfairness. At root of the perception of unfairness is the question around what is or is not an excused absence. And my experience is that that's most effectively handled to manage group cohesion by making it automatic and making it clear and fair. I think 2 consecutive, as you point out, it's too few. My suggestion would be 3 in a calendar year triggers a request to the council office to appoint someone. The council can ignore the request and the same person can stay appointed, or they could appoint someone else. To just make it an automatic function so it's not a discretionary issue which raises conflict. So that's sort of the and I pause for others who've been part of other commissions and neighborhood council or other settings where this is a common challenge to determine what's the most appropriate course of action. That's my suggested amendment, is to just have the 308 be less about removal of members and notification of council office that someone's been unable to make it, and to let them know and request that they appoint someone.
Or is that a request?
Commissioner Cotto.
If you put consider to request. What
I would be uncomfortable with making a request to appoint. I would say to just inform them of the absences and then let them make the best decision at that point, because I feel like we're overstepping our bounds even if we say we're asking for a new appointment. To me, that sounds a little like we're sort of taking the lead on that, and I just based on my experience, I just think that I don't think that would be taken
I guess
very well by
I'm less
council
worried
office.
about how the council members take the communication from the commission than I am about too few people. There's different considerations, and I get that's a reasonable consideration if you don't want to offend the elected leadership of the city for whom this body serves as an advisory arm. I agree with that. I think the more prominent problem has been inadequate attendance. There's 2 different challenges, and I would suggest that anything we can do to increase the number of people here so that the full breadth of 4.1 million city residents are adequately represented.
Commissioner Mandel.
Not to create more work for the leadership of this august body, but normally prior to notifying elected officials who are very busy doing the city's work, we would self-police ourselves. And so what I would suggest is, though it doesn't have to be one of the 3 of you guys, that it could be one of us, you can make one of us an enforcer, that if somebody's missing meetings, that one of us makes a phone call to that individual and says, hey, are you just too busy work-wise? Do you not want to be on the commission? You're kind of making it difficult for us to get quorum. If you really can't do it, we don't want you to, but either make the meetings or please be mature and adult and resign.
Yeah, I agree.
I would do it. I I'd volunteer to do that job, but it ought to be somebody with a leadership title, because otherwise, who am I to do that?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It should be a conversation with the member first.
Right.
The commission member first, to find out what's going on and give them an opportunity to either, we don't know why somebody would miss 3 meetings, but there may be very good reasons for that.
Right.
But I agree, having a conversation with the commissioner
There could be an
first
illness.
before.
There could be a personal illness that somebody has, but doesn't want the city clerk and or the whole commission to know. But on a one-on-one phone call with one individual, say, hey, listen, I really want to, but I'm getting chemotherapy, and I'll be there as soon as I get better.
Right, okay. Commissioner Sparza?
Yeah, the language is in there that the commission president should make the additional contact. So I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. That's kind of how I feel. There's the relationship between the appointing council member and the commissioner, and I feel like, because I have had to go to council members just twice, and I've already had that conversation, so I think I have a pretty good idea of where the boundary is with some. And so I do kind of feel like that relationship, that we shouldn't be stepping in between that relationship between the appointer and the appointee. Okay, so we'll have to, okay, so there's a few things we can do here. We can keep these as two separate sections, but I would recommend, okay, we can either collapse the two together under attendance. That would be section 3.7, 3.07, and 3.08. We could keep them as separate sections, but I would suggest then at that point, if we keep 3.08, to change the title from removal of members to something else, like notification of attendance, of absences, notification of absences, rather than removal of members. Commissioner Mandel.
I would move that we just combine the two.
Yeah.
So they get rid of the offending term that you have well pointed out, and then also leave the verbiage as it is, because in fact, the third paragraph of 3.07 says if you miss 2 consecutive meetings when the year may be considered inactive. But who's considering? We are considering, or you as the leadership are considering, and you might consider it inactive or you might not consider it inactive, and we have voted you in and give you the authority to make that determination.
Okay, and I think the last part of that paragraph as well, where it says, notify the appointing council officer in writing that the inactive member may be considered for removal, we need to take that out as well.
Okay.
I think collapsing the two together, I'm sorry, I can't see damn thing. Collapsing the two together is probably the better way to do, I think.
And maybe it could just say notify, okay, we'll notify the appointing council member in writing that the member has been absent 3 or more times. Do people even feel comfortable with that, or should
It's
it be
better
a
than the
higher
2
threshold?
consecutive.
Yeah, it's better than 2 consecutive, but do we want to say maybe 3 triggers a conversation and 4 triggers a letter to the council member? And that just to say, we just want to alert, you know, I almost want to say it maybe shouldn't be in writing and should be a phone call. You know, anything in writing, anything in writing is subject to a FOIA request, and it just seems like putting that in writing and sending it in could potentially be used against someone in the future without any explanation on why they were absent.
Just say notify.
Yeah, could we, are people fine? Okay, we'll notify the appointing council officer, the member has been absent a total of, for 4 or more times.
I'm not waving my eyes, can't see here with the sun.
You look
But
great,
I do,
Commissioner.
I do have a question. Are we going to head this up as attendance and skip the term removal from office?
Yes.
I
Yes,
think yeah, it's cleaner to just
Yes.
put it under
Right.
attendance.
Right.
A little less onerous.
Yeah.
okay, so by combining the two, so these are the potential, and I think we're going to lose our city attorney representative fairly shortly. So by combining the two, we would be deleting the 3rd paragraph, which is also the 3rd sentence. Well, okay, so here are all the amendments. In the 2nd sentence, beginning with the commission members will be counted as absent, we're adding the word if they are not present at commission meetings. We are deleting the next sentence, the commission members who missed 2 consecutive meetings, et cetera, is removed. In the next sentence, we are changing the commission secretary to the city clerk will be responsible for recording commission members. We are deleting the title and section 3.08, removal of members. And then it will read, after a member is absent and inactive, it will read as combined with section 3.07. After a member is absent and inactive as described in section 3.07 above. No, it will not read that.
As described above, just get rid of in section 3.07 because we're now in it.
Right, okay.
It's if the member misses a third meeting, that's where you are connecting.
Okay, so, all right, so Commissioner Sharp is recommending we delete all of the sentences in 3.08, which will be combined with 3.07, to start with, if the member misses three meetings, we should say 3 meetings. No, we can't do that, because, no, we can't delete the part where they contact the member.
That's right after it. The commission president will notify.
No, okay, so tell me exactly what you'd like to delete in section 3.08.
Well, or let me just read what I think reflects the discussion that just occurred. If the member misses a third meeting within the calendar year, the commission president will notify the member in writing. And if the commissioner misses a fourth meeting in the calendar year, the commission president may notify the council office.
Okay, so that's a
That's it.
complete rewriting.
Yeah, it's just simplifying the two concepts that you described. One, notifying the member, reach out, second to the council office at a fourth meeting, but using the word notify instead of anything else. That's just what I heard everyone say.
And it
Or
says the
you
commission president may notify, not will, right?
But you put the word in writing to notify the commissioner.
That's not what I said out loud. That's what's in here. I was just trying to say it very simply to capture the concept of the last discussion, more
Okay.
or less ignoring the paragraph that's in front of us.
Okay, so it will read then, and I'm just going to take up section 3.08 now, deleting the title, and then it will start with, okay, so we'll start with, if the member misses 3 meetings within a calendar year, the commission president will notify the member, I'm going to take out in writing, and if the commissioner misses, if a commissioner, misses a 4th meeting in a calendar year, the commission president may notify the appointing council office. Pretty simple. We haven't missed anything, right?
When you say that, excuse me, but you're going to notify the member that they've missed 3 meetings, or?
Yes. So if they miss 3 meetings, we notify the member, hey, you've missed 3 meetings in a calendar year, and then it's a discussion that we have.
Would you say
If they miss a 4th meeting, then I guess at the discretion of the president, because it uses the word may as opposed to will, the council president, at their discretion can notify the council office.
All right, but notifying them that they've missed 3 meetings, presumably they have paid attention that they know they've missed 3, so maybe you
They may not.
Well, but contact the member about their interest in continuing to serve,
Yeah, that's the
or something like that. I'm just,
We're just trying to do it simpler. That's certainly the purpose of the concept.
Well, in that case, then we would go back to the original language. So the original language would be the commission president or his or her designee will contact the member to find out what problems exist, and if the member still has an interest in serving on the commission. That is kind of put much more diplomatically, because I suppose you could have a commission president who, could
I'm
be
sure you're going to want
quite
a
harsh.
list of all their problems, but, but
That is a more diplomatic way of saying it
they
in the
still have an
original
interest
language.
in serving. They're in, that could
Okay, so what if we said, if the member misses, let's see,
contact the member.
if the member misses 3 meetings, 3 consecutive meetings. Do we want to say, no, we just want to say 3 meetings in a calendar year, not necessarily consecutive, right? Okay, so if a member misses 3
Contact the
meetings,
member and find out if they have an interest in serving.
okay,
Yeah.
in a
You have
calendar
to know what
year.
problems they have, I mean. Yeah. Just contact them and find out if they want to continue to serve. They say, you mean I'm on that commission? That's a notification.
Okay, I'm just going to write out language to see if we can agree on this.
It's a little hard to see here, doesn't it, Salvador?
Mr. Hittrick, you could certainly select a seat on the other side.
No, that's all right.
Actually, there's another seat next to you.
Yeah, that one's not bad, maybe. Yeah, that's all right. Let's see how this one works. Oh, that's no better.
Why don't you sit over here? Why don't you come here and sit over here?
Maybe I'll just leave.
You could sit with the city attorney.
Contact me about what problems I have.
Commissioner Hitzer, try to sit over here.
John, you can sit over there. Take your name tag.
And you too, Commissioner Esparza.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, so how about this language? If a member misses 3 meetings in a calendar year, the commission president or his or her designee will contact the member to find out what problems exist and if the member still has an interest in serving on the commission. If a member misses a 4th meeting, actually we should say if the member misses 4 meetings in a calendar year, the commission president may notify the appointing council office. So can we get, do you need me to read that again, or can we get?
So moved.
Okay, so it's been moved,
Second.
moved and seconded. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Candy, as the clerk, is that clear what the language is? Or do you need me to read it again, just in case?
No, it's okay, I'll go ahead and listen to it.
Okay, just want to make sure we're clear. Since it's bylaws, I definitely want to make sure this is clear. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. So we are, just to reiterate, we are combining 3.07 and 3.08, but we're leaving only the title for 3.07 under attendance and deleting 3.08, removal of members, and collapse those paragraphs. Okay, section 3.09. Resignation. Any member of the commission may resign by notifying the commission president or the secretary. So we should change that to the city clerk.
And get rid of 3.08. You don't need to, not, it's redundant. Just say any member of the commission may resign by notifying the commission president or the city clerk.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Get rid of the first 4 words. Just start with any member of the commission.
Oh, I see, yeah, because
may
it references
resign
3.08.
by
Okay,
notifying the commission president or the city clerk.
okay, so, so what I'm hearing is that we want to delete in section 3.09, notwithstanding section 3.08, which has now been deleted, and it will now read, any member of the commission may resign by notifying the commission president or the city clerk in writing. Should we also add the appointing council member to that? Because it's quite possible somebody would just call the council member and say, I resign. And in that case, they would not need to contact me. They may not want to contact the city clerk's office. That may just be a discussion between the two of them. So would people feel comfortable, or the appointing officer, or the appointing council member? Okay. Well, it would be any one of the three.
But I think the challenge of only notifying the council office is that it may not reach this room for quite some time.
Right.
So I think there ought to be at a minimum an expectation that the appointment is active until the city clerk or commission president is notified, even if they've also mentioned it to the council office.
You could do.
Well, the issue, okay.
May resign by notifying the commission president or the city clerk, as well as,
Well, I don't think it needs to be both necessarily.
should be. We need
The-
to know
the-
about it first.
Right.
So that we can do our business. And out of respect for the city council member who appointed you, it would be nice and respectful to that individual or their chief of staff. I mean, obviously, we're just notifying them.
Right. So I've been in these situations before where the person, for whatever reason, just wants to leave, and they call whoever appointed them and says, I'm leaving, and they won't do the other stuff. And then what happens is that seat then is just there. And we just don't know. We just won't know. In other words, in a resignation situation, someone just may not care, and they may not care. They may say, I'm done. I told council member so-and-so I'm leaving, and they don't want to go through the extra burden
Fine.
of contacting.
So they're in violation of our bylaws. They're no longer on the commission anyway. It doesn't make a difference.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is that they're not going to care enough maybe to,
but-
because I have actually been in situations
Yeah.
like this where the bylaws recommended, two entities that they didn't even have
most-
a relationship with.
Most people who are volunteering to drive downtown and give up their servers free to the city of Los Angeles and try to help the healthcare of the people are going to be respectful enough to notify either Candy, the city clerk, or you. And if somebody in the future, 9 years from now, doesn't, big deal. They're in violation of the bylaws. It doesn't hurt us. They're rude, and it's done, and we still move on.
Right, or they could be sick, or they could, you know what I mean, like we don't know what the circumstances would be, but,
If they're resigning, they're not sick. If they're resigning because they're sick, they would have notified somebody, or they'd ask somebody to call.
Well, couldn't we ask the city clerk's office to follow up with the council member's office to find out if that person is,
She really doesn't need more work to do.
that's true, but
okay, I mean, I'm just going by experience, and I think that people tend to call the person they have the best relationship with, and if the best relationship that they have is with the council member, they will just call the council member. I mean, at which point then the council member would just put someone else in, but then it puts the burden on the council office to basically say, okay, we're removing this person and we're putting this person in.
Which is why it's good that it's written here to encourage, though as Dr. Manel's pointed out, we cannot force someone to use the common courtesy of notifying the personnel closest to this process, which is the city clerk and the commission leadership. So in summary, my suggestion would be in addition that we eliminate the first two words in the section 308 and then just start with A, capital A, any member.
And just keep it commission president and city clerk and not include the council member? Do people feel comfortable with that?
probably I would too.
I agree.
Would you notify the council member and the commission president?
I
Or
would.
would
I
you
mean-
feel that it would just be? Okay. Okay, so people don't feel that it should be an or the council member? Or do they?
Might get lost.
My proposal is to keep the expectation, again, we're just talking about expectation, not a, rule or something of greater heaviness, but if the expectation is, as someone's enrolled, that they communicate to the clerk and/or commission president, I think that will, in addition to whatever contact they may want to have with the city council office, increase the speed of identifying how the commission's going to handle that and notifying the replacement. That's all. I just knowing how busy the council offices are, sometimes the information might not leap over to someone here, if that was the only point of contact.
But if they only notified the council office, then we couldn't consider that seat vacant until they notified one of the two of us the way that it's written in here. Is that correct? Because we actually had a situation like this where someone resigned. They didn't resign in writing, so we had to keep them on the roster. We had to keep calling their name, even though we knew that they had left, because they just didn't notify us in writing. So I'm saying that when you put in your own bylaws that they haven't actually resigned unless they contact one of two people that they may not ever contact, then their resignation isn't had and it's not accepted. So then you're still calling them on the roster, you're still considering them as part of quorum, you're still considering that not vacant. So I'm just saying that that puts a burden on this commission, because that office is not considered vacant until they contact either the clerk or the council or the commission president. Do we really want to do that, is what I'm saying, because if for some reason that person doesn't feel comfortable contacting either one of us, feels like I told the council member at some party that I was at or whatever, I just feel like, keeping that person on our roster, even though we know that they've resigned but haven't followed the bylaws exactly, this has been an issue for this commission before.
But when that,
Commissioner Cotto.
if they told their council member, then wouldn't that go under the terms of the office, the 1 year, and after the year?
Right, but it wouldn't be considered vacant because they hadn't told the commission president or the clerk. So that seat would still be considered filled for the sake of quorum and for the sake of everything else until the council member either removed them, wrote a letter to one of us saying they were removed, or filled that seat with someone else. So I'm just saying, for the purposes of quorum, they would still be considered one of our commissioners until they met one of these two requirements, right?
Yes, but I think I think the more important situation that you should think about is that, frankly, I don't really know why you are trying to put common courtesy into the bylaws. I think people who are resigning from this commission would be courteous enough to let the council members know whether it's in the bylaws or not. I think more importantly, you want to know as soon as that person resigns that person actually resigned. I think that's why you want to put in the bylaws the burden of the resigning member to notify either the clerk or you or the commission president, because the news that a person may have resigned from the council office back to this commission may take 2-3 months. And in the meantime, you have somebody whose position you view as somebody that's filling, but in reality, that person really shouldn't be counted for the purpose of quorum. And I think that may actually interfere with, constituting a quorum. I think that's the concern that you have. You want to know as soon as a person resigns that that person actually resigned. And I think that is accomplished by asking the members to be mindful in letting either the commission president or the clerk's office know. I think that's the best way. And whether that person notifies or not in terms of reaching out to the council office, I would assume that person is courteous enough to do that. But I don't think you have to actually worry about that courtesy as part of the bylaws requirement.
Right. I mean, the only problem is that it has already happened where they didn't give us a resignation in writing, so it wasn't considered a resignation, even though they had told the council office that they were leaving. We still had to consider them in terms of the roll call as an actual member.
And I mean, I think that's fine. At the time, we didn't have our bylaws, so it was kind of unfortunate thing, but I think this is, I agree that this is the best way to do it. Just, we need to know first. Maybe that person doesn't want to talk to their council member. Maybe that's why they're resigning. They're mad and they don't want it. So to put that as a requirement may be an additional burden.
Right, and I think the point that I was making isn't that they had to. The point that I was making is that it could be the city clerk or the commission president or the appointing council member, not all three, not, it could be either of the
But
three.
if they notify the city council member, and that doesn't come to us for 2-3 months, we're in the same situation.
And that's
So
more likely.
you and the clerk have to be the individuals who are notified.
Right.
And it's respectful to the city council. I think we ought to write it in there, but to me, that doesn't matter as much. But, because if not, we're going to notify the city council the minute we know about it.
So
But-
there
Right.
have been two approaches that have been discussed for about the last 15 minutes. My suggestion, Madam President, is you would call a vote on the two different, proposals.
Okay, so are people fine with that? It would just be the city clerk or the commission president? Okay. All right, so for section 3.09, we are extracting, notwithstanding section 3.08 and changing changing secretary to the city clerk in writing. So can I get a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, section 3.09 passes with amendments. Okay, so now, Commissioner Mandel, if you'd like to make your motion to move up the numbers.
I would move that we correct all the numbers of section 3 and moving up all the numbers that are missing.
Second.
So that they're consecutive.
Correct.
Candy, since you'll be doing this, is that clear? Okay. Okay, so the motion's on the table to move up all the numbers so that they are consecutive. Sorry. Is there a second?
Second, yeah.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, great. So that passes.
That's good.
Okay, did we lose Mr. Lee?
I'll try to do my best to ably step in his shoes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And can you let everyone know who you are, please?
Sure, Barack Vaughn, Deputy City Attorney as well. And I'll be,
you.
if there's any questions on the bylaws, I'll do my best to answer.
Great, thank you. Okay, section 4.01, general. This is a listing of the officers to be the president, also known as a commission president and referred to as such throughout these bylaws, vice presidents, a secretary, and a treasurer. Okay, do we want to specify that we have two vice presidents?
Vice presidents, we don't have to spell out the number necessarily.
So we could
I mean,
add more if
two
we
or
felt
three
like.
or whatever.
Okay. And then we're omitting a secretary. What about the treasurer? How do people feel about having a treasurer?
I think we should have a treasurer. Currently, we have no money, but maybe in the future
It's
we will.
not true. There is
No,
money.
there is money. There's
there
money
needs to be a
that's been budgeted at $75,000 for the
Oh,
commission.
So then we ought to have a treasurer who, makes sure that that's properly accounted for.
Great. I would agree with that. Okay, so people feel comfortable with that? Any dissenting opinions on that? Okay. The commission may from time to time appoint such other officers with titles, authority, and duties as the commission may designate. So we're pretty open there. Okay, so other than removal of a secretary, we're fine, I think, with that section, and we'll vote on it later, but I'd like to go on to the next section, if that's okay. Okay, 4.02, election of officers. All officers of the commission shall be elected by the majority of the commission members present during the annual meeting. We never really specified when the annual meeting was, right?
It's listed as July.
It's listed, yeah, July is in the bylaws.
It's in the
Okay.
bylaws somewhere.
This is it.
Okay, so that's good. So we're taking up our bylaws. All officers of the commission shall be elected by the majority of the commission members present during the annual meeting. The election of the officers of the commission should be the first item on the agenda, except for the public comment at the annual meeting. Okay, I mean, we started our terms in November, so are people, I think Mr. Lee had said that the reason they put July 1st is because most commissions take up their annual meeting in July. We can either do that, or we could go back to November to be consistent with the one-year rules
The other
that
reason
we've
to
been
do it
working on.
in July is because that's when there's a change in city office holders and therefore potentially new appointees. So it's sort of the city's cycle, both budgetary
Okay,
as well as actual elections.
okay, so people feel comfortable with that. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm not hearing any changes in section 4.02.
I was going to suggest to actually put in July after the annual meeting, the words in July.
Okay, all officers of the commission should be elected. Okay, so there's been a suggestion to add July 1st after annual meeting.
Do you want to put July 1st or just in July? Because the 1st might be...
No.
Oh, yeah, you're right, July, okay. Annual meeting in July, you're right, because we're the second Monday, thank you. That means we'll have to change it in the section later where it specifies that date. Okay. Any other changes to that section? No? Okay, can I get a motion to, we'll move for the motion. I think we'll take one more section up if that's
Still
okay.
continuing on the second page.
Oh, okay. All right, the nomination for the commission officer shall be orally made from the floor by the commission members/officers. The nominations need not be seconded. The incumbent president shall solicit nominations for the office of the president. Upon elected, the new president shall solicit nominations for the officers of the vice presidents. We'll have to remove the word secretary, vice presidents, and treasurer in that order. In the event of commission officer vacancies, the same procedure of oral nomination from the floor and majority vote shall be employed to elect replacements from among the commission members. So this is different from how we do it now. So we should talk about that if people feel comfortable with how it's done now or if they want to do it by election. All commission officers shall serve at the pleasure of the commission. So now what happens is that if a commission officer resigns, the person in the seat just below that person would move up until the next actual election of the officers. In this case, it's saying that there would be an election, which basically means that it requires quorum. So if there were to be an election, I think that's fine, but we need to at least say in the interim that the first vice president would move up to president, because the president has specific duties, right, to create the agenda and that kind of thing. So if you have an absent president from a resignation, what happens is that you have to wait till the election to create that president, right? Is that correct? And then what happens is we're in a mess because who is in charge of actually creating the agenda?
That's correct.
Okay. So what do you guys want to do?
What's the fix? Say the sentence that fixes the problem. I get the problem. Give us the sentence that...
Well, the fix would be that if there's a vacancy in an officer position, that the officer in the position just below that moves up, and that way, if the officer that's leaving is the president, then the first vice president can fill that role.
Is that until the next meeting at which a vote can occur? in order to deal with the agenda setting problem you raised, or is that for the duration of the term? In other words, it's sort of a policy choice.
Exactly,
There.
so we're really changing policy. I mean, this is something we could also kick to the retreat for people to think about, because this is, I mean, I think this is, this is something we really need to think about, like how do you want to elect your officers?
I don't think we have to think about it. I think we've elected you because we respect and have confidence in you as leaders, and the first vice president moves up. Second vice president moves to the first vice president. It's not that complicated. At the next meeting, we then vote for a second vice president. The only issue would be the treasurer in a short period of time, and so we'd have to codify something in this paragraph, what to do for a treasurer for a few weeks between meetings.
Which is not a big deal.
Are you looking for me if that's acceptable?
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Just trying to wait my turn there. I would think that would be fine to do. It would be to move up the office holders, and then obviously the next meeting, so it's agendized, to be able to then vote for the remaining officers that are no longer those offices. So if the first vice president moves up to president, I guess the term would be interim president then?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is that if we added language, it could say interim president, or it could just say president until
Yeah, well, let's discuss it here. I think we can.
the next annual meeting, or...
I think we're going to have pretty quick consensus, if not unanimity. I think we should just change that paragraph to say, in the event of the commission president vacancy, in the event of the commission president vacancy.
Well, it doesn't say commission president, it says officer, because it could also
No,
be...
let's get into the second
Okay.
paragraph.
I see.
In the event of so that paragraph, as it reads, we change it to say, in the event of a commission president vacancy, comma, the first vice president will assume the position of president unless they do not want to serve.
Just period.
What happens if they don't want to serve? As they want to stay first vice president? You wouldn't, but in the future,
Well-
somebody might like being a first vice president and not want to take the responsibilities of president. We're codifying this forever, or at least for a long time. So just play with me for a little bit. In the event the commission president vacancy, the first vice president will assume the role of the president if they accept those responsibilities, period. The second vice president will then become the first vice president, period. In the event of other commission officer vacancies, the same procedure of oral nomination from the floor, majority vote shall be employed, elect replacements from among the commission members at the next scheduled meeting.
That would just be the treasurer, right?
No, well, the second vice president. Because we could do that with second vice president for a couple weeks.
Yeah, so we're basically saying that the treasurer never moves up to the second vice president, right?
Well, we can do that at the next meeting. We're just trying to do something for several weeks
The problem you're
until the next
addressing,
meeting.
Suzie, just so I understand correctly, is that to schedule the next meeting requires someone to give blessing for the agenda to go out, and in some interim period of time, that could be stuck forever, unless
Right.
this is...
Right, that could be stuck forever. But the question is, how then are we moving the election forward? In other words,
The agenda.
does the first vice president assume the roles as president until the next annual meeting when we elect officers?
Yes.
Or just until the next meeting?
No, to the end of the term.
Okay, so your thought is the annual meeting. Do people agree with that, though? So I don't know that we actually have agreement on that. Because what if the commission doesn't want the first vice president to serve as the president?
But isn't that the purpose of having continuity to have that vice president, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so it makes sense, and I don't think it's,
If I may, it does say all commission officers serve at the pleasure of the commission.
right.
So if there's a revolt, then there'd be an election, presumably. I mean, isn't that how it works? If they serve at the pleasure? It's like in England. You know?
Like in England.
Right, we'll call an election parliament. Okay, all right, so we'll have to go over the language then. Okay, so you were recommending this second to last paragraph that we change this not to commission officer vacancy, but in the event of a commission president vacancy, the first vice president will assume the position of president if
If-
they accept that position,
Right, and serve until the end of the term.
and serve until the next annual meeting, should we say?
That's the same.
Because the term.
That's
could-
fine.
Yeah, the next
next
annual
an-
meeting, because that's where the
That's fine.
officers are,
That's fine.
or the next election of officers. I mean,
No,
we
because
don't.
we're going to have election of officer to fill the voided spot the next month. Say until to the next annual meeting.
Next annual meeting, okay.
And then,
And then the second vice president,
second vice president you have to mention, but in the event of the first vice president,
oh,
presidential vacancy would be better grammar, I think. In the event of first vice presidential vacancy, the second vice president will assume those responsibilities if he or she accepts those responsibilities. And then, in the event of other commission officer vacancies, just leave the next paragraph the way it is.
okay, hold on just a second, I'm just still writing. Okay, and then, I'm sorry, the last paragraph is,
In the event of other commission officer vacancies, just the way it reads there, comma, the same procedure of oral nomination, blah, 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 goes on.
okay, so let's see if I have the wording right. In the event of a commission president vacancy, the first vice president will assume the position of president if they accept that position and serve until the next annual meeting. In the event of a first vice president vacancy, the second vice president will assume the role of the first vice president. And then it will read, in the event of other commission officer vacancies, the same procedure of oral nomination from the floor and majority vote shall be employed to elect replacements from among the commission members. Okay, can I get a motion on that?
No, I'll
Can I
make
just
that
correct
motion.
one word in a part above that, where it says upon elected, the new president should be upon being elected? Just
Oh,
just to
okay.
be accurate,
Missing word.
upon being elected.
Okay, so Candy, is that clear?
Can you repeat it, please?
Okay, so in the paragraph above where it says the nominations for the commission officers shall be orally made from the floor by the commission members' officers, it goes on to a second sentence, and 1, 2, 3, 3 lines down, it says upon, the sentence starting with upon elected, we want to change that to say upon being elected, the new president shall solicit nominations for the offices of the vice presidents and treasurer in that order. And we took out the word secretary and.
Out here it says that the vice president's going to step up.
Okay, so let's take, just because this was a very complicated section, let's take 4.02, election of officers, with all the changes, including the first change, which is after the words annual meeting, it says in July. And then to say, upon being elected, the new president shall solicit nominations. And then the entire paragraph that we've already delineated about the commission president, the first vice president moving up, second vice president moving up,
And the word secretary comes out.
and the word secretary comes out. Okay, so can I get a motion just for section 4.02, election of officers, and then we'll go back and do the other two sections?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to pass section 4.02, election of officers as amended. Any further discussion? Any clarification needed by the city clerk? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. All right, so now we have to go back to, in Article 4, Section 4.01, General, where we're taking out the words "a secretary." Can I get a motion?
Moved.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded for Section 4.01. As amended, take out a secretary. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. 4.03, terms of office. Each officer shall serve for a period of 1 year, subject to removal. Okay, so we need to take out,
Section 3.06.
right. So we have to take out subject to removal pursuant to section 3.08. For a period of 1 year or until a successor is elected and qualified? No, is appointed. Yeah, so let's see, officers are eligible for reelection. No, we're not elected. Oh, officers, yes.
Yeah, they might be elected.
Yes, officers are eligible for election. Okay. Okay, so this would be amended to read, each officer shall serve for a period of 1 year until a successor is appointed. Officers are eligible for reelection.
I
Should
think
we,
you have to say appointed or elected. Because the only people being appointed would be...
I'm sorry, you're right, because this is talking about officers. Okay.
Right. So each...
Elected.
The first vice president moves into the president's position, and the
Is
second
that
vice president
considered
moves
an
into first.
appointment when we do it by succession that way?
Yes.
Well, I'm asking city attorney's office because I'm afraid we're getting into
Well,
it.
yeah, I mean, you're stepping into the role, so you'd be appointed, I mean, again, it's almost like an acting interim. You're appointed to be the president or vice president. So, yeah, I think appointed would be a correct term.
So there isn't any way this could be interpreted as needing a vote for the commission to appoint?
I think the commission just amended the bylaws to state that the succession of
Okay.
moving up. So I don't think that, I think the additional votes are for the other officers as noted.
Okay, so it would read, each officer shall serve for a period of 1 year or until a successor is elected or appointed. Officers are eligible for re-election. Okay. Okay, let's take this, before we get into the officer duties, can we just get this section, it's also starting to get a little late, so can we just get
So
this
moved.
section? Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. All right, President. The Commission President, as the Chief Executive Officer of the Commission, shall in general supervise and control all business affairs of the Commission. The Commission President shall preside at all meetings of the Commission and advise the officers and the Commission on matters of general policy and perform such other duties as may be assigned to him, her from time to time by the Commission. The Commission President shall provide leadership to the Commission and pursue opportunities to develop a broad community-wide base of voluntary support and cooperation dedicated to meeting the objectives of the Commission. People are fine with that? Okay. Vice Presidents. The Commission Vice President shall assume the role of the Commission President in the event of his or her absence. Okay, so we just basically said that's not necessarily the case, right? Because it's really the first Vice President that does that. And there really are no rules here for the Vice President.
Well, the second vice president does assume that role at meetings, not permanently, but if both of you guys, first, if Matthew and you are not here at a meeting, second vice president can call us to order and start the business until you get here if you're tied up in a meeting or traffic or whatever.
Okay,
So it should read the way it does. I think that's why we put it that way.
okay. Okay, we've deleted section 4.06. Okay, treasurer. The commission treasurer, as the chief financial officer, shall be responsible for developing and directing all financial matters of the corporation, including receiving and dispersing corporation funds in consultation with the commission president, and depositing all such monies in the name of the corporation in banks, trust companies, or other depositories in consultation with the commission president. In general, the treasurer shall perform all duties incident to the office of the treasurer, including an annual financial report to the commission as to the financial status of the commission and other related duties that the commission president may from time to time assign. This sounds really good, but we actually can't enact this in practice because the city clerk is paid for directly by the city. We don't have a separate bank account. I believe we have a line item in the budget. So payment goes directly, the city clerk right now is our only expenditure that I know of.
There is a bank account called the Health Commission Trust Fund.
That's right, but I don't believe that the clerk is actually paid out of that trust fund. Because the budget item that is passing this year is actually a budgeted item of $75,000 that I don't know will be put in, we just don't know if that will be put in the trust fund. Trust fund was created because AIDS Healthcare Foundation gave $100,000 to the city for that to remain in that trust fund just for the commission. But I think that the budgeted item for the commission, for the city clerk, actually is in the general fund. Is that,
So I think
but we don't know.
I think that's exactly the reason that the commission needs to adopt a treasurer position and to quickly receive a report regarding the financial status of the commission from the treasurer. I mean, I think the ambiguity is all the greater need for someone to assume this role. I guess ideally, as part of the elections at the next meeting, to bring some clarity to how the funds work and what are the expectations and what would be the needs and so on. So to me seems valuable, even if currently it's more complicated than can be addressed by this.
Right, so I'm basically saying that, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a treasurer position, I'm saying that the duties as laid out here are not practical because the treasurer will not have that responsibility. In other words, the city is not going to allow one of our commissioners to go in and write checks and disbursements as it's laid out here, and not allow us to create our own bank account. And it's stating here that the duties are
Well, that can be authorized.
receiving and dispersing corporation funds. That will not be the case. In consultation with the commission president, and depositing all such monies in the name of the corporation in banks.
No,
So-
those duties can happen exactly as they're written, by way of the commission having an agenda item that acknowledges receipt of $75,000 or $100,000 and directing it to be applied to the appropriate account in order to serve the purposes. In other words, the functions described here may not occur in the same way that, someone would with a bag of cash, walk down to the Office of Finance to, pay their taxes. But I think enacting these duties assumes a future series of agenda items that are important for the financial transparency of this.
I would just
entity.
lose the middle sentence. Keep the first sentence and change after with commission president to a period and get rid of the and depositing blah, blah, blah. And then just pick it up again with, in general, the treasurer shall perform all duties incident to the office of the treasurer, including annual financial report, blah, blah, blah. So you're just getting
Right.
rid of the second run-on part of that first sentence. So after the word commission president, you put a period.
Well, the part in front of that, though, is where the problem lies as well, which is including receiving and dispersing corporation funds. So a treasurer here can report on receipts and disbursements, but can't actually make them necessarily.
Should, though. There shouldn't be monies that flow to or through the city of Los Angeles regarding the operations of this body that this body is not aware of and engaged in.
Aware of, yes, but the relationship between the city clerk and how the city clerk gets paid and the general fund of the city is not something that our treasurer is going to be able to be signing off on necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think that's in conflict with the language as written here.
They're developing and directing it. They're not doing it. They're working with the treasurer's office.
Or CAO or whoever is.
Right, but they won't be directing it either. That's the problem.
Sure they will. And anything that we're spending, we should have, it ought to go through the commission. If somebody else is deciding to do it against the commission's desires, it defeats the purpose of having a fund that belongs to the commission. Call it something else. Don't call it the commission fund. Call it the mayor's health fund. I don't care. If it's the commission's fund, theoretically, we should have a fiduciary responsibility to be aware of what it is and to direct it. And this gives them the authority to develop it, which means meeting with or discussing with the controller of the city as well as the controller's office to do it in an appropriate manner.
I have a question.
Okay, Commissioner
Where'd the
Hisarich.
$100,000 go? That came from the AIDS Healthcare Foundation.
It mainly went to the city clerk's office for our
Yeah.
staff.
It went into the general fund, and then, how about?
Yes, it
Did
was. It
Cal
was
State
dispersed
Northridge
to the
get
city
any
clerk's office.
compensation?
I'm sorry, what?
Did Cal State Northridge get any compensation for doing that?
No, that was a separate grant that was given to Cal State Northridge from the AIDS Healthcare Foundation.
Okay, so that didn't go through us, okay.
Right.
So as far as we know, the 100,000 went to the city and,
Well, I've actually asked that and was told that.
okay.
So
So it was almost 2 years of the city clerk's time staffing our meetings. If I can ask for the advice too of the city attorney in this matter, because I don't know how disbursements are made from the city to the city staff, but I'm guessing that they're not going to require some sign off from our commission treasurer.
Well,
So,
I'd love to say I knew that question, but that would probably be more of a CAO or different type of question than the city, than I would be able to articulate. But in hearing, I mean, whether it's developing or directing, I'm not sure that the treasurer may develop. I mean, it could happen. I'm not sure, since the position's being created. I'm not sure if you want to limit what the treasurer may or may not be able to do. I think from what I'm hearing so far, Commissioner Mandel's recommendation of possibly striking that sentence may work, but that's as far as I would know and go at this point. But any other dispersion of funds or how certain city employees are paid, that would not necessarily be the question I would be able to answer. I think that's more of a CAO answer.
The other things, President Shannon, is that we're not paying the city clerk. We would be giving the city the money to pay the city clerk. So that's somewhere in our annual budget. We would be making a determination that, hey, listen, the city clerk does a lot of great work for us, and we have a responsibility to pay for his or her services. And so this commission would discuss that and approve it on an annual or going forward basis.
Well,
And the treasurer is just the person making sure that it's done in an appropriate manner. So they're not writing a check. So it's not going to really affect the city clerk's office and or any other disbursement of money.
So the budget committee actually put $75,000 in for the commission, for the city clerk.
Right, but that doesn't have to be in this fund. We have no control of that. That's the city council. They're saying that for us to exist, we need to have some staff support, and the city council in their wisdom said, we're going to properly account for the time of the city clerk by putting in our budget $75,000 going forward so that this commission is properly staffed. And they did that. That's not necessarily this treasurer's job. That's the city council appropriately giving us some staff support. The treasurer doesn't have to be involved in that.
If I may, I mean, actually, the city clerk likely submitted a budget to the mayor's office. The mayor's office then creates the budget, and then it goes to the council, and they debate it. And that I went and looked, and that's where we saw that there was $75,000 in there to the city clerk. We don't really have any discretion over that I'm aware of.
Yeah, we don't have,
Right.
that's kind of what I'm trying to say. So when you put in here the duties, which is dispersing corporation funds in consultation with the commission,
That's not corporation
this
funds.
is not,
That's the.
Right.
okay, well
That's
then
different
then
funding.
we really have to define what that means. That's really, the only money that we typically get is what is given to us by the budget, or what we can arrange to be granted to another entity, which doesn't go through this commission
But
at all.
those should be considered corporation funds. So when there were resources from AHF that were routed to Cal State Northridge, the customary way an organization would handle that sort of transaction is to have a presentation from the treasurer regarding the parameters, the scope, the cost of work, whether they're competitive bids, et cetera, and an affirmative vote from the body to further deputize and authorize that by acknowledging that possibility as a potential role in a future scenario in the definition of this position creates a formal space and process and responsibility for an individual to bring that forward as an agenda item so that said corporation funds would be handled in a way consistent with how other bodies handle those sorts of transactions.
Right, except that really wasn't the relationship here, A, and B, if an organization wants to grant to another entity a sponsorship or a grant, it doesn't go through the commission.
If it's to support the work of the Health Commission, it should. And that's the purpose of having a treasurer position with some enumerated roles and responsibilities to keep the group appraised
But-
regarding any matters like that or other funds that would potentially become available.
Except in that situation, though, if I just explain this, in that situation, though, then the granting money would be given to the city.
No.
Yes, it would need to be given to the city commission and put any fund for the city commission into the trust fund. And then and then whatever administrative fees would need to be paid to the city.
That's not
And
what I'm...
then the money, and then because if a competitive bid is being made by the city commission, and we're an entity of the city of Los Angeles, then that money would have to go into the trust fund, am I correct?
I'm not sure that's the point Mr. Sharp, or Commissioner Sharp was making, but I'm not sure. You can explain.
Yeah, that's a different topic. I'm just trying to say as clearly as I can that I think there are financial matters and there are some potentially enumerated roles for a separate position besides the president that would potentially play a role in some unforeseeable situations. One situation is the city's ongoing general fund budget and to what extent this commission would want to be represented in that sort of hearing and or hear about that hearing, right? So that's sort of one potential role that's described here. Another potential role is this scenario where there's a third party trying to reach, or another third party. I'm proposing it would be helpful for a treasurer to be aware of that transaction, present information on it. It wouldn't necessarily necessitate in all permutations that the funding route through the city, but regarding moving forward the work of the commission, any and all financial matters ought to be under the purview of a particular officer, which is exactly how it's handled in every other non-for-profit organization. There's a separate role from the president, distinct. Sometimes it's called CFO, sometimes it's called treasurer. It's responsible for a basket of different financial related issues. And I think we can't anticipate each of them. And I think it's tricky to get the right language.
Can I suggest that we, that until we understand how the city disperses funds, we're all kind of like, shooting blindly here. Unless we understand the mechanics of how disbursements occur and the mechanics of how other commissions disperse funds, I think we ought to take this discussion until we have a little more information about how other entities function, including particularly other commissions in the city that have their funds, if that's what we call them, funds to distribute at their discretion. But I've heard a bunch of different things, like we have discretion, we should have discretion, we don't have discretion. I don't think anybody really knows, to be honest with you. At least that's the sense I'm getting. So I'd like to get more information before we decide how we're going to outline the duties of that role. I think if there's money to be, that money to be managed, then that's an appropriate role for the treasurer. We just can't delineate specifically what that's going to be because we don't have enough information.
I have a question. Is it possible to, in a sense, ratify or approve the fact that we want a treasurer and, move that without getting into the details of what that person would do? Is that something that can happen today for the record? Like, yes, we want a treasurer. We don't know what that treasurer's going to do, right? But yes, we agree on that. Can that happen?
I think it can happen, but it could also happen, and you could ratify what says here, and you can always change the bylaws just for that one section in the future with public notification that the bylaw is going to be changed, paragraph whatever, 4.07.
I would be comfortable changing the language just to the commission treasurer as a chief financial officer shall be responsible for reporting on all financial matters related to the health commission, and just leaving it very simple like that. And then as we understand the process, and that person could be part of helping us understand the process of reporting on the disbursements that are going out for 75,000 or whatever financial arrangements we make, but just put the burden on them of reporting as opposed to dispersing, collecting monies and all that. It almost seems like the wording of this came out of something else.
Sure.
We're not a corporation, so it came out of some business.
Yeah, okay, so are people comfortable with that? So let me write it down. Okay, so the commission treasurer as the chief financial officer shall be responsible for reporting on financial matters of the Health Commission, City Health Commission.
And other related duties that may be assigned. Because there could potentially be disbursements, right? I mean, that's the sort of question mark. So other related duties preserve some authority for this body to direct that in the future, right?
Yep, good. I'm all for open-ended. Okay, so we're comfortable with that? Okay, so let me read that again, just for the purposes of the motion. The commission treasurer, as the chief financial officer, the commission treasurer, as the chief financial officer, shall be responsible for reporting on financial matters of the City Health Commission and other related duties that may be assigned.
Yes.
And then that keeps it open. Good? Okay, can I get a motion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded for section 4.07 for the treasurer for the amendments that we just outlined. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, great. Section 4.07 is passed. Okay, resignation of officers. Any officer may resign his or her office at any time by giving written notice to the commission president or commission secretary. Any resignation shall take effect at the date of the receipt of that notice or at any time specified in that notice, and unless otherwise specified in that notice, the acceptance of the resignation shall not be necessary to make it effective. Any resignation is without prejudice to the rights of the commission under any contract in which the officer is a party. That sounds pretty straightforward to me.
Except for the commission secretary needs to be changed
Oh,
to
oh.
or city clerk.
Secretary.
Sorry. City clerk. Okay, so let's go on to section 4.09. Commission members at any regular meeting or special meetings of the commission may remove any officer with or without cause upon a majority vote of the quorum then present. Sounds pretty self-explanatory. Section 4.10, compensation and expenses. Officers shall serve without salary and by resolution of the commission may be paid or reimbursed for expenses arising out of their services as officers. Now that actually may require checking on how the $75,000 is dispersed, because I don't think we even have money for that.
Well, we can put that in the bylaws. It doesn't mean that.
Yeah, we can put it in the bylaws. It doesn't mean that you actually get it. Okay, so for these three sections, then if people are comfortable with all three of them, the only change would be to, in section 4.08, resignation of officers, remove commission secretary and change it to city clerk. So can I get a motion with that amendment to pass sections 4.08, 4.09, and 4.10?
Moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
No, just to point out that, and I'm comfortable with the way this sits and reads, but you guys should just think for a second in 4.09, with or without cause. Are you three comfortable with that? Because this basically says that even if you're doing a great job, we can get rid of you.
It's democracy.
Well, but usually democracy is on an election and not at any time.
Well, with or without cause, actually,
It's probably illegal.
it actually protects you, because if it's only with cause, that means if someone gets removed, it's really bad.
It's a litigation kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm fine with this,
I think
but
it kind of has to say with or without
you guys are
cause.
giving up a lot of power by allowing us at any regular meeting to dethrone you.
No, it has to be agendized, so it's
Well,
not quite that swift.
And we're not royalty. I mean, I think,
All right.
I think that people should be serving at the pleasure of the commission, and if the commission doesn't want you
Okay.
to serve in that capacity, no harm done.
Great.
Just
All right.
move on. I mean, I would hope that, I hope that there would be diplomacy. I would hope there'd be diplomacy. But it is a volunteer position, so if it were a paid position, that might be a concern for someone, I don't know. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, those three sections have passed. Great, and we still have quorum. Yay. Okay, Article 5 committees. Okay, so we have never really created committees, we've created working groups. And these working groups have never had, more than 7 members in them. And I'm not sure how those working groups relate to this particular bylaw. So, okay, so let's read section 5.01.
Can I ask a process question? From a timing standpoint, how close are we to losing quorum? Is there a way to go through some of the remaining content without going line by line, unless there's disagreements people have already flagged? I don't know, I want to see how far we can get. And I think going line by line, we may not make it.
Are we required to go line by line?
No, and that's what I'm asking the
Well-
President, Madam Chair, how do you like to proceed?
So this was sort of why I wanted to take it up at the retreat, because I've done bylaws changes before and they take a really, really long time. So we could, I would like to take up quorum. Okay, I think one of the things that we could do is prioritize maybe some of these sections, just to make sure.
Well, let me see if I can restate my question. Are there persons around the table who have specific edits to sections beyond 6.02,
Yes.
which was previously identified as one that needs a change?
We could just stipulate that the clerk could take out any references to secretary and
Right,
any
that could move.
subsequent parts there.
Okay, well, the answer for me is yes, particularly on committees. I think it's very important to go over that. Also, our meetings requirements, how public comment is dealt with. I mean, a lot of that we really need to,
Public comment's the only other one
discuss.
I have a note on. I'm just trying to take the temperature of the room to
okay.
see how much more we can
I
get
have
done.
it on in several sections.
So let's take which sections that you guys really want to discuss line by line. Tell us those sections. All the other sections we'll vote on in block. And then we can see if we can do all those sections and make everybody happy and be done tonight.
So I only have a comment, I really have only one other suggested edit for the whole night, which is I think to go under 7.02, regular meetings section, I have a suggestion about public comment. That's it. That's all I have on the remaining 3 pages. I think there was agreement earlier to change 6.02 to the filled seats instead of the respective membership to deal with the quorum
Right, well, there
problem.
are more changes than that.
Okay, so those are the only changes I had to offer.
Okay, so I have changes, well, at least a discussion on 5.01 for committees. And I would like the city attorney to weigh in on that, because we have established working groups as of this point. Changes 6.02. Changes to public comment.
What number is that?
It would be added, right?
I'm proposing to add it as related to 7.02. I don't see it currently there, which is why I was
Okay.
proposing to add it.
So let me move, if I may, and hopefully someone will second it. that we take 5.01, 6.02, 7.02 separately, and all the other sections that we approve in block. That's my motion. If I get it.
Well, 7.04 we've already done.
Great.
Right.
Correct.
And then we need to change the word commission secretary in 7.05.
Okay, so let's take 501,
It's-
602, 702, 704 is done already, and 705 off, add a block. All the rest will be en bloc and be approved on one vote.
Okay, which ones are in, now I'm confused, and if I'm confused and the city clerk is editing this, I'm just,
501, 602, 702, 705
No, no,
will be
which- okay,
discussed
so-
by line.
instead of that, just tell me which ones that you want to pass without changing them.
The rest of the things other than the four that he mentioned.
Yeah.
Right, but okay, so we actually have to take a vote on them, so we need to exactly which sections we're taking up, and then we have to vote
Okay.
on it, so the city
I'm cool with
clerk
that.
knows.
So 601,
Hold on just a second, okay.
I'd like to take en bloc 601, 603, 701, 703.
Oh, wait, 701, is that the one where we have changes
I
to
don't.
public comment?
No,
Where is the public comment
and
section?
702.
I'm proposing that we add it to 702. But I have no suggested edits on 701.
But public comment, would it go under 7.02?
Okay, it can go somewhere else.
Okay, so that's what we have to figure out before we do these en bloc.
It could be a brand-new number. It doesn't affect the, Dr. Manel's question is, where are there edits to stuff here?
Right, but that's why we have to know what edits people are going to be proposing, so that we know which section that is that we're changing.
So then, if a discussion of public comment is potentially an additional section, I have no further edits.
Would that be included in 701?
All right, so let's, if we're going to do it that way, I would say, I'll go back. My en bloc that I would like to vote on would be 601, 603, 703, 705, 706, 8,
Article 8.
Article 8, 901, 902, 903 is one en bloc, and I would ask that that gets approved today. And then the other four areas, we can go line item by line, line by line. Somebody second it,
That was
please?
the motion, yeah, seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I would like to give commissioners a little bit of time to just read over it really quickly.
They look like they've been reading diligently.
Right, so it's 601, 603,
703,
703,
705, Article 8, and then 901,
you got 706.
Yeah, 706 is an adjournment,
Yeah, Article 8.
and all of Article 9.
Right,
901,
and Article
902, and 903. Okay.
And it's moved and seconded, right? Let's call for the question.
Vote.
Okay, have people had time to read over it? I mean, this is it.
It's all right.
Well, we could always go back and amend it later. At another meeting.
Okay. I would say the only change for 705 would be changing commission
No, we took
secretary
705
to
out.
city clerk.
705 is going to be considered separately.
Oh,
No, it's not.
oh, I see.
no,
I
it's
wrote
in
down
your block.
705, you said
No, she
706?
asked me to take it out before.
I mean, the only change in 705 is to take out the secretary.
But
Right.
let's
Okay,
handle
we're
that
taking
separately,
that
because we're
out.
making
Okay.
changes, and everything else we're not making changes on.
Okay.
President, may we call the question?
Okay, the question has been called. Okay, so we're voting en bloc on section 601, 603, 703, 706, Article 8, 901, 902, and 903. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. All right, so,
Could we now address 705, because that's going to be very easy?
yes, okay, section 705, advance meeting notice. So it seems one change here, which is, and used by the commission secretary will be changed to city clerk. Okay,
I'll second.
moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, 705 passes. Okay.
Then I think the one that you also felt had to happen was 6.02, right, which is the definition of quorum.
Yes.
We received guidance earlier that we can get that completed, that enabled, right?
Okay, so are people, is a general consensus here that we're going to do 602 and then maybe end the meeting and do this later, or
No,
at the retreat, or do we want to just barrel through?
let's get 602 done.
Okay.
And then see how much more we can get done.
Okay, 602 quorum. For the conduct of, conduct of all business, a quorum of the commission or its ad hoc committees shall be the majority of the filled positions.
Filled seats was what Chris said.
Well, you still have to stay respective because that's referring both to the commission and to the committees. So it's a respective.
Filled seats.
Of their respective filled seats, okay. Sorry.
Is seats the right term? Filled?
I'm just, I wrote down exactly what Chris said earlier. If Brock would like to offer a, edit, I think we're happy to hear it, but the concept was to reset quorum to reflect who's
Right.
currently on board, which is an
Right.
important problem that Susie brought.
Would it be better to say the majority of the filled seats, vacancies not added to the total, so that we're very clear that we're not including vacant seats as part of a quorum?
No, filled by definition means non-vacant.
Filled positions, right?
Okay. I'm just saying, do we need to make it clear? Because right now, we're operating under vacant seats being part of quorum.
Right, that's why we're changing the
To filled.
Okay.
filled seats. If it's not filled, it's vacant.
It sounds great when you say it, but I've just been in so many battles over bylaws, because people are like, it's not clear. And it's really it's our duty to make it clear, correct, as the commission?
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I think filled seats,
It's not going to be misinterpreted.
it would not, I would, do
Okay.
not think that would be misinterpreted at all.
Okay. All right.
I move,
Actually, do we want to use the term 50% or majority?
I would love 50%.
So you mean just half of the,
Majority is a little tiny bit more than,
Well, Chris said half and half plus one, right? That was his
well, the
expression.
definition of majority is a little bit more than 50%. I would love 50%, just to avoid what happened when we were in Van Nuys.
so you say a half is what adequate?
I'm comfortable with that.
So you're saying that just in case, say you have, I'm just playing this out, say you have 4 members, 2 vote yes, 2 vote no, I mean, you wouldn't pass, so you're saying majority.
No, that's not for voting, that's for quorum.
It's not for void.
Quorum.
That's
for
just starting a
quorum.
meeting.
You're saying so just 50% of the filled seats?
Yes,
I don't think you can change the word majority.
I'm not, what do you
I
mean?
think conceptually, majority has always been the term used in that kind of setting, not just half of it.
In any other commission bylaws or any that I've looked at, it's always majority, or it just seems, I'm not sure if you actually can change it, but majority seems to be the operative term.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll change it to majority of their respective filled seats. Okay? Okay, can I get a motion?
I move to enact the language that President Shan just read.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, section 6.02 is done. Okay, 6.3 is passed.
So the only two is 501 and 701, and we're done.
Right.
Which one you want to take first?
Okay, I'd like to take up 501 because I think committees are really important and we've already created working groups. And since we have the city attorney still here, thank you for staying, by the way. I knew ours was exactly right. The commission shall have the power at any time to create, change the size of and membership of and discharge any ad hoc committee. No ad hoc committee shall consist of more than 7 members. All ad hoc committees are authorized only to make recommendations for final decision or action by the commission. Okay, so a few things. We've created working groups, and within those working groups, we have created language for the annual report that we brought back to the commission, so that's not a problem. But I was told that if it's an official subcommittee and not a working group, that entity, even if it's under 7 members, is only allowed to meet in a public meeting that's noticed and couldn't meet over the phone or do work outside of, having it be a public meeting space. So if you could clarify that. I just want to make sure that if we do create committees as opposed to these working groups, what we're talking about.
Just for clarification, I believe you are correct if there are committees, but I'm not 100% sure. What I can do is report back or get back to you with respect to that. My understanding is in other commissions, the working group, or the committees usually meet, but I'm not sure necessarily if I've seen them meet in public, or sometimes they don't even meet. So to answer your question, I can get back to you just so I can know exactly to answer your specific question.
Okay, because typically it's been 3 or 4 of us on a phone call just going over language for the annual report. So I'm just I'm just concerned about this because the bylaws provide for these committees, but I'm wondering if we need to also.
What we're ratifying here doesn't stop that.
It doesn't prevent.
Okay.
Correct.
So we should just ratify what's there and then get clarification on the future about what we can do, because this doesn't prevent that from happening.
Okay, and then go ahead,
By the very nature
Commissioner.
of them being less than a quorum, they can't take action. So it shouldn't have to be a public meeting or anything. It's just a group getting together to discuss something, but not take action per se.
Well, still I think under the Brown Act, any quote, depending, taking that to a different extreme, if you have discussion, sometimes it needs to be.
But if you don't have a quorum that can take action,
Then you're correct.
I don't think that's the trigger, Commissioner Hitchcock. I was on a committee that was assembled by the LUSD board to help formulate recommendations, and the trigger was that the discussion was going to eventually reach a public stage and that the public didn't have a chance to be part of a private conversation that was of a substantial nature, which is what President Shannon is raising. By the definition of the group is actually what the trigger is. If it's defined as a committee, that triggers the public's right to know about the meeting. If it's defined as a working group, as we've currently been practicing, it does not trigger the public's automatic right. We can still notice that such a phone call is going to occur and put out the password and so on, but we're not obligated to by the definition of the...
As long as it's less than 7.
7 wasn't the relevant figure. It was the name of the group.
Well,
No, it was
7 is
also-
the relevant figure by the Brown Act.
Yeah, the
For-
Brown
yeah.
Act said
For taking an action, But
No,
for a group
even
that-
for meeting. We
No,
would-
even for a meeting,
When we
you
were
can't
just,
have more than
on the
7.
initial discussion of the Brown Act to us and city attorney explained to us very specifically, even if we were at a Christmas party and there was more than half,
Right.
i.e. 8, at the Christmas party, just coincidentally, that we cannot be in the same room hanging out, cheering each other, even if we had no conversation, because that wasn't noticed. So
Right.
that, to be very careful that we never have more than 7, being that there was 15.
Is that
Though-
correct?
So I would think we should ratify this as is, but the one question I would ask, now that we changed the filled seat rule,
It
if we
doesn't
could just
change the
clarification
membership.
going forward from the city attorney's office, what's the appropriate number for us at a cocktail party that we might run into each other, because the number might not be 7 anymore. It
Well,
might be a different number.
If I can,
Go ahead.
I can actually answer that because it defines our membership as 15 members.
Correct.
And that's why we did that. That's why Chris was saying you want to keep it at 15 members, but change your quorum to filled seats, as opposed to our membership to filled seats. Because if our membership changed to filled
Right,
seats,
right.
you're right, it would change Brown Act's trigger.
Right, I agree with you, but I still think that separate from that, we should just get clarification from the city's attorney office that if we're anywhere as a group, that we're not in violation of Brown Act.
Well, as long as, from what President Shannon said, and I agree with, obviously, my esteemed colleague, Mr. Lee, that it is based on the number of members, not necessarily the filled seats. So that's why the number 7 still is relevant on that.
Right.
But, so I don't, taking your cocktail party to the extreme, I think that it's still based on 7, not necessarily anything less than that.
Okay, and then the last part of that is on the next page of that section, which says, these special committees may include non-commission members as non-voting participants. The commission president will clearly charge any ad hoc committee with the scope and time frame of their work. People are fine with that? Okay. All right, great. Can we get a motion then for
I'll move to adopt as
5.01, general powers and limitations of committees? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Okay, and any abstentions? Okay, great. Okay, let's see where we are. 7:01, meetings. Okay, general. All commission meetings will be open to the public according to the provisions of the Brown Act. Agenda for meetings, I'm sorry, the light is really low here, so I'm just trying to get through this. Agenda for meetings shall provide an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the commission on any item of interest to the public before or during the commission's consideration of the term that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the corporation. So this is public comment. No action shall be taken on any item not appearing on the agenda unless the action is otherwise authorized by the Brown Act to be acted upon without having appeared on the posted agenda. The commission may adopt rules governing procedure and manner for receipt of public comments. Minutes will be taken of all commission meetings, distributed to all members, and made available to the public to review and reproduction. I think that should be reproduce. And for reproduction. It's not grammatically correct. Okay, Commissioner Sharp?
So I have just one simple, well, maybe not simple, I have one word change. That's it. The rest of the document is in the last sentence of this large paragraph. I propose that the commission shall annually adopt rules governing the procedure and manner for receipt of public comments.
Listen,
Okay, commission shall, can you repeat that, the actual language?
The commission shall annually adopt rules. And the rest of the sentence is the same, governing the procedure and manner for receipt of public comments. So just changing may to shall and adding the word annually, or maybe at the annual meeting, however is most appropriate.
What if we don't want to change rules once we make them?
That can be determined on an annual basis.
What if we want to change them not annually, but sooner?
Some other time, does this box us in?
Right. What I will describe my intention, and then maybe someone can articulate a better way to achieve it, whether, agree or disagree we can get into. My intention is to ensure that there's a discussion about this. Over 18 months, I have brought up on 5 or 6 occasions the need to have an agenda item to make a decision for how public comment will be handled in this particular body relative to other city council committees and other commissions I've served on, et cetera. We've not had that discussion. We've not adopted a procedure. It's been in the president's purview for how to manage public comment. And I'm proposing that that's something that the full commission do. And whether that occurs at the annual meeting or at the next meeting or on a semi-annual basis, I'm open to suggestions. But I think the full commission ought to do it, and it ought to be specified in the bylaws that that's going to happen. So I guess the word change I'm primarily advocating is shall, as opposed to may.
Makes
In
it
other words, you
mandatory.
want discussion every year or so about how we're going to take public comment. Essentially.
Right, but it doesn't have to be annually. And,
Say
I mean, it could be annually, but it doesn't have to be at the annual meeting.
Should it be at least annually, at the very least?
You could
Well,
say
I'm
shall
open to-
regularly.
I'm open to thoughts. I mean, there's 2 factors in the environment. One is there's changes in officers who have different perspectives and approaches. And the second is there's actual genuine changes in sort of case law regarding this. It's been a moving target over the years in the California courts, right? And it's been litigated and there's been adjustments. And so, the policy-making bodies have to catch up and continue to adjust how they approach it. So those are the 2 factors. There's different people, and then there's actually a genuinely different environment that occurs every couple years. And so I don't know the right interval to codify in the bylaws to deal with that. I just hope that it occurs at some interval as a group discussion with a group vote as to what is going to be the approach.
I
Why
think,
don't we say regularly?
my hesitation is just boxing in a future commission, enforcing that. I mean, we don't know what the situation's going to be in the future, but I just feel like when you make it a bylaw, it forces the future commission to do this, and we don't know what the makeup of that commission's going to be. Things may be settled.
What's the this that they would be boxed in by?
Well, by forcing them to agendize this at least once a year, when
Yeah.
they may not want to, and we don't
They
know what
could
the makeup
adopt
of
the
that
current-
commission
There's
is.
no action.
They could adopt continue practice.
No, it says shall adopt rules. It doesn't say, so you're not allowed to take no action. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. 5 years down the line, I don't know who's going to be on the commission or what the makeup is, but
And they should have a regular opportunity and an expectation built into the process that they discuss how they're going to engage and manage or not manage public comment.
okay, just plain devil's advocate, if I could get the advice of the city attorney's office. If we put shall into the bylaws, and let's say that we've adopted rules that maybe many members of the public don't like and want to force the commission to take up, by putting shall in there, if a future commission doesn't do it, are we subject to any kind of lawsuit? Or is there a problem if a future commission doesn't take it up?
No, I would think this is a bylaw, so if future, in a sense, you're trying to assume 5 years from now whether the commission shall, you can take up shall annually, if say, adopt rules governing the procedures, if all you would have to do is bring up, we will adopt the same rules as last year or the year before. You can do it as easy as that, and it's a simple adoption. But it's up to you as a commission whether you want to have that discussion every year, and then either ratify the existing rules, or if there's been changes in case law or the Brown Act, those rules can then, you can then say we're adopting rules consistent with the Brown Act.
I mean, we'd have to be consistent with the Brown Act.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, if I may, being required to do it annually, we're required to do it anyway, I guess, is to adjust the public hearing procedures to be in compliance with the Brown Act. So,
Correct. I mean, the commission is governed obviously under the Brown Act. If the commission wants to set its own rules with regarding the for public comment consistent with the Brown Act, the commission can absolutely do that.
and then those would be tested if somebody chose to test them from the public or something, but,
Should they see so fit.
yeah. Or they're,
I think the annual thing, though, if the group prefers annually, I'll vote for that, is a limiting point where the word regularly allows us to be a little bit more flexible about when it's done, because maybe it'd be more appropriate to be done in 8 months or 4 months or 12, 14 months.
Yeah.
So I would try to amend Matthew's suggestion, but I'm comfortable with annually. But I think regularly gives us a little bit more flexibility going forward.
you like may or you like shall?
Shall's better.
Shall. Okay. But I think regularly is okay. Isn't that what you said?
Yeah.
Regularly?
Yeah.
You could say
Yeah, so
periodic.
not box in a period of time. I agree.
So I think there's, I guess, a floor and a ceiling is the other way to think about it. I'm proposing that it at least occur once.
Well, I think it would be more than once.
That's cool. I'm not opposed to that. As it relates to the bylaws, I'm saying it at least ought to occur once.
Correct.
Right, so then you just say shall adopt rules, but not annually.
I like the word regularly. Shall adopt rules regularly governing the procedure.
Does regularly mean anything?
Regularly, I mean, if you're asking if you're asking my interpretation on a Brown Act, I don't think it regularly would, obviously you have to follow the Brown Act. If you're saying regularly and you're looking at Commissioner Sharp's points, regularly can be interpreted past a year, if you're looking, from what I understand, more than once a year, there's always terminology that the commission can use, like biannually or other aspects that the commission may seek if you're looking at it. Instead of
I'm purposely being vague to allow the commission to have a sense so that when there are frustrated commission members, that it could be readdressed one way or the other.
It's up to the commission then, if regularly, if that's the word that they want to use.
Can we say periodically?
It's obviously up to whatever, as long as it's consistent with the Brown Act, and the commission seems to be consistent with the Brown Act, when you want to bring up the subject to discuss that, that is up to you.
There are two separate issues. One is the rules themselves need to be consistent with the Brown Act. There's been no disagreement about that. The question is how, within the universe of potential options, does this particular body choose to manage it? There's a few different options. And then the second choice is how often is that question revisited? And I'm less certain that that frequency needs to be identified in the bylaws than simply the fact that there should be at least an annual decision. But it can also be addressed more often. If there's a will at the final agenda item, which is future agenda items, commissioners can propose an agenda item for the next meeting. It's sort of one way to address something that comes up periodically without boxing it into the bylaws.
Okay.
So that was my reason for thinking it ought to occur annually is that that's consistent with other sorts of things in bylaws, whereas other things that may come up periodically that need to be addressed may not need that specificity in the bylaws. The distinction I was trying to draw.
Well, there is the issue that at least saying annually forces the issue, because if you say regularly, shall someday, I mean, is sort of what that could become. So putting
make-
it in
make the
annually
motion.
does.
So I'd like to make a motion that the sentence be adopted or edited, the commission shall adopt rules annually governing the procedure and manner for receipt of public comments. I'd like to make that motion and see if there's a second.
Second.
Yeah, I can't support annually, but okay. Any discussion on this? I kind of like Commissioner Vick's periodically as opposed to
We'll
annually.
make an alternate motion. We'll see.
I don't know, can I make a substitute motion?
If you get a
Vote one,
second,
and then
Robert's rule says that you can,
Is there a second for saying periodically instead of annually?
I second.
Okay, Commissioner Vick seconds periodically. So we take a vote on the substitute motion first
correct.
and then on the main motion. Okay. All right, so it's moved and seconded to change the last line, or not the last line, but the last line of the
It has to be
paragraph.
discussion first.
Yes, that's the question.
It has to be
How would
discussion.
you define periodically?
That's at the discretion of the commission. Periodically is at the discretion of the commission. So it says you shall adopt rules, so we'll have to have rules, and then it's up to the commission when they would take that up again. But periodically means that there needs to be
So within
some
the
time
commission
frame.
term,
Sometime.
It needs to be some time frame,
between the commission term,
right?
it's pretty much the same as annually, wouldn't it be, if it's?
Well, not necessarily, because I've been on the commission now for much longer than a year.
Yeah, annually would be, I believe, interpreted as once every 12 months.
Okay.
It could be once every 3 months or once every 3 years. It could be
Right.
in the judgment of the prevailing officers at that point in time.
Right, and that way you're not basically telling future commissions that they have to take this up annually according to their bylaws. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to change the may to shall and to periodically. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
What was
Got
the motion?
3.
That's the periodic.
Okay, actually, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand just so that I can know if you're voting for shall and periodically. Okay, that's 2. Okay, and all opposed? 2 to 4, okay. So that motion fails. Any abstentions? Just for the record, okay. Okay, so then the motion on the table then is to change this to shall adopt rules annually governing the procedure and manner for receipt of public comments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. 2 opposed. And any abstentions? Okay, so it's 5, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't count yours. Commissioner Hisrich,
He was,
What did I do?
were you an aye
he's an
I was on the
Annual.
prevailing
on the
side?
annually.
For annually, okay. So then it's 6 to 2, just for the purposes of counting, and that would be no abstentions. Okay, next.
Excuse me, Commissioner Shannon, can you read the paragraph again, please?
Sure. At the end of the first paragraph of 7.01, the very last sentence of that first paragraph says, has been changed to state, the commission shall adopt rules annually governing the procedure and manner for receipt of public comments. Okay, regular meetings. Regular meetings, did we do this one yet? No. Regular meetings of the commission will be held on second Monday at 6 p.m. at Los Angeles Council Chambers. Unless the commission president designates otherwise, all meetings will adhere to the guidelines of the Brown Act. That sounds pretty straightforward, and we voted on a 6 o'clock start time. Okay, can I get a motion, please? Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. And any abstentions? Okay, that passes. Okay, 703 we've passed already. 704 special meetings we passed at the beginning. 705, I think that was in the
passed
bucket,
it.
right? Yes.
Did that.
Just have
706
modified the
I got them all.
was in the bucket.
City clerk.
Article 8. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, that's it for the bylaws, and it only took us, what, 3.5 hours?
Excuse me, Commissioner Shannon?
Yes.
For section 4.06 that was deleted, are we moving the numbers?
Oh, yeah, good catch. Okay, so we'll need a motion to move up the numbers for section 4, for Article 4, I'm sorry. Can I get a
So
motion for
moved.
that? Okay, it's been moved and seconded, moved up to the numbers for Article 4 to be consecutive. All in favor, please, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? Okay. All right, great. Okay, moving on to item number 2. I only have a public comment card for item 4, by the way, so I will call for each item number public comment, but I only have this one card. Okay, item 2, discussion and/or action for scheduling a Los Angeles City Health Commission retreat. Commissioner Cotto, would you like to read off the dates, the potential dates that we have? And this is something we can also send out. Candy, if you'd be okay sending out a survey.
Okay, so this is for August and September. It'd be either on a Thursday, Friday, or a Saturday. So August would be, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. August 3, 4, or 5, or 18, 19, that's a Friday, Saturday. And then at the end of August, beginning of September, it'd be August 31, 1 or 2, September 1, 2, that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Or at the end of September, 28, 29, 30, those would be the proposed dates.
Okay, and we can send this out, actually, this is just for the purposes too of just recording this, but we'll also send this out as a survey so people
Do
can
a
let
doodle
us know.
survey.
Yeah, we'll do it, Candy will send out a survey and mark off what days we can expect most of the people to be able to attend.
All right.
Most of our commissioners.
1, 2, 3.
I'm sorry, what?
First choice, second choice, third choice.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Doodle, using Doodle, but I could create a Doodle, and if you want to send it out, that would be great, and I'll put all the potential, I would just need the times from you, Commissioner Cotter.
Times, anytime, you decide.
Anytime on those
Right.
dates, okay.
Clear
So,
out.
actually, before we send it out, are people, if we have it on a weeknight, it turns out on a weeknight, people are fine with starting at 6? Okay.
Well, just one thought on that is that the persons who are not here are, it's sort of, it's most important to hear from the people who are not here, in a way. Whether a daytime or 5 or 6, like the parties that are not with us are the ones we most need to include in the scheduling decision.
Okay, well, that'll be 2, so there's only 2 commissioners missing. Okay, so, yeah, because the way Doodle works, you have to set a time typically. Okay, and I don't have any public comment for item 2. Item 3, discussion and/or action on the Affordable Care Act and American Health Care Act. I think you had asked Commissioner Sharp to put this on the agenda, and this is because we didn't have quorum, this was from a previous agenda that ended up
A long
as
time
a
ago,
remnant.
I had a lot to say about this. A lot of water has passed under the bridge on the federal legislative efforts that have proposed great harm to Los Angeles residents. I don't think that I have anything enlightening to say today about it or a specific action to request. At a point in time, many, many months ago, the mayor convened a forum about this and set up a Facebook page to get signatures opposing all this stuff. It's changing so fast. I feel incapable of formulating a cogent and thoughtful
action on behalf of this group, and I'd love us to hold it as a potential future agenda item in case there's actual legislative cohesion in DC where we might be a useful force in pushing back in some way. But at this point, it's kind of craziness.
I mean, unless people feel that it's important to say that we stand by the Affordable Care Act.
Well, that was certainly our intent
Right.
in raising it as an issue.
Right.
I don't know if we want to do a motion or an action to that regard
Right.
today.
Commissioner Mendel.
I think we should really just wait and see, and for two reasons. One, I actually think that the Affordable Care Act has massive problems that are very dangerous to LA County as a whole, and specifically LA City, and I can give you data on that I've done as from a research point of view. The other thing is for our representatives, both in Congress and in the U.S. Senate, there might be negotiations going on, and I'd hate to become a lightning rod for the city of Los Angeles that could create political deficits for some of our elected leaders who are going to try to negotiate with the people who are writing the bill. So I think that at this point in time, until we see what's out there, we should reserve making a political statement, which is all it would be, because we're not going to have any action on that bill anyway. You'd be making a statement saying that we want to defend the ACA, when in fact the ACA may bankrupt the County of Los Angeles, unless it gets fixed. And it could be fixed, but to allow our representatives in the House and or U.S. Senate to fix it, they're going to have to do some serious negotiations, and they might be doing that as we speak, but we don't know that, so we shouldn't make their jobs harder.
On the other hand, 23 million people could lose their health care. And to be silent on that as a health commission,
Well,
that's sort of the other side of it.
I'm not so sure 23 million people is a true number. I think that the political rhetoric personally...
Well, it says could.
Well, anything could happen, but I think that what I can tell you is that the LA County is the largest recipient of what's called disproportionate share of hospital funds that we've heard Dr. Katz discuss at this commission. We're the largest recipient currently in the ACA, unless it's fixed. We're going to get the largest cut in DSH funds of any other county in the country, and that needs to be fixed. And if it's not fixed, there's going to be a massive shortfall to the County of Los Angeles in revenues. The other thing is that in all the yucky, disgusting Medicaid manipulation that's currently being discussed in the Senate bill, it's all back-loaded, so it doesn't happen until 2023, because everybody who's already on Medicaid from the expansion in the city and county of Los Angeles will continue to be on the plan. So it's for new people coming on. I'm not saying it doesn't need to be fixed. I do think there's massive problems with the bill. It's unacceptable as it is, but there's a lot of political rhetoric coming out of Washington, and I think that for us, we should advocate for access to health care for everybody in the city and county of Los Angeles. Anything more than that might not be a true statement and is pure political, which I don't necessarily think that we should be doing.
Commissioner Sharp.
As the maker of the motion, I'm slowly recalling my initial impulse. I thought it would be helpful for us to go on record opposing what I think are widely believed to be worse proposals, the replacement proposals. I think that was concept number one, that both the House proposal and the Senate proposal will be worse. That is not to say that the ACA is perfect or does not need improvement, but that the two legislative proposals in the House and Senate would make things worse. I think that was idea number one. Then idea number two is the second idea you brought, which I don't think we have the capacity to do tonight, which is to develop some statement of principles regarding what a fix would look like. I fully acknowledge we neither have the expertise nor do I have the blood sugar level to successfully work out some consensus on what might be a shared set of principles to acknowledge improvements that are needed in the ACA. But I would, I guess, love to make a substitute motion to see if we could at least agree to express our opposition to the two proposals that have been promulgated to replace the ACA.
Okay, I would love to do that, actually.
I would too.
Yeah, I think a statement coming out of this commission, which we could turn into a press release,
A general, right.
I think would at least put us on the record. I mean, I look back at records and see, what bodies did what in certain points in time.
And perhaps we could schedule time to discuss the details of what a better replacement would look like, which I would benefit from immensely.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, the ACA could be improved. I mean, there are certain income levels where people can't afford to get insurance.
Right, it wasn't perfect. It's not perfect.
It's not perfect, yeah. But we could at least say that the replacements that were opposed to them. So do you want to make the motion?
How is it work now? We want to make sure we're consistent with what we
We are.
initially proposed.
Discussion
Okay.
and/or action of the Affordable Care Act and American Health Care Act.
And I believe the Senate version had a slightly like Better American Care Act. So I move that the Los Angeles City Health Commission transmits its position of opposition to the Los Angeles City Council regarding the House legislation, the American Health Care Act, and the Senate legislation, the Better Health Care Act, I think is the name of the Senate version. And I certainly request that Dr. Mendel and/or others try and bring some recommendations to the next meeting regarding some principles we might be able to work through together.
But that's not part of your motion.
Good point.
So
I'm
you
getting
need to
carried away.
go back if you can and just make the motion, because this has happened before and sometimes the discussion ends up in the
As
motion.
Which is a mistake. I move that the Health Commission express to the City of Los Angeles, which I think is our legal obligation as an advisory body, our opposition to the House legislation, the American Health Care Act, and the Senate Better Health Care Act legislation.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Vick? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? One abstention. Record for one abstention. Okay, great, thank you. Motion passes. Okay, item 4, items for future discussion. This is where, now we may have a retreat before the next meeting. We don't know yet, depending on what dates people decide. So some of the things that you bring up for future discussion could also end up at the retreat. I mean, I'm sure we want to talk about how to handle public comment at the retreat and annual report and that kind of thing. But if there's anything, we've been trying to get Dr. Ferrer in, and somehow the second Monday has not worked out for her personal schedule, which is what she's looking at for the 5 and 6 o'clock time. But if there's any particular issue you want to take up, people that you would like to have address the commission, this is the time to let us know.
Well, there's been I should pause to ask to be recognized.
Commissioner Sharp.
There have been 3 front-page LA Times stories about the extraordinary health impact of housing construction immediately adjacent to freeways. The City of Los Angeles is engaged in a thorough review of public health literature, and as a parent of young children, I'm extremely mindful of what I believe the research says regarding young lungs on it, and I would propose that we attempt to formulate and communicate a position regarding the right balance between public health protection and the need for the construction of housing, particularly for the homeless, where many of the potential sites might be located immediately adjacent to freeways. I think this commission could provide an enormous value to city policymakers by spending some time trying to discuss and formulate a recommendation on this subject.
Do you see that in the form of a resolution?
I have no idea, because the 3 people I've asked provided me completely contradicting views regarding what the science says regarding the right buffer and barrier, not something we're unfamiliar with in terms of oil extraction. So I don't want to presuppose what would be the position, whether it's a resolution or recommendation. There's city processes underway that the mayor's office started, the city council's a process. I just love us to get some experts in the room and attempt to form a consensus, if possible, regarding the right balance between the need for adequate housing construction and the protections needed on lungs.
Great, I've been thinking about this. That's
So
excellent.
air pollution and housing, something like that is the agenda item.
Commissioner Cotto.
Yes, we've had a report in the past from the DOT on the Vision Zero plan. A lot of things have been implemented. I'd like to, at one point, have an update from them as, what's happened since, in that year that's passed since they've presented to us.
Okay, anything else? Did you?
I think a little while ago we had talked, I had mentioned food deserts and food access. So I think that's something important. I know in my council district there are a couple of grocery stores, or at least I know one that has closed. So some people are having issues with access to food.
Okay, great. Any other ideas? Some of these we could take up at the retreat too. It would be great because we could go more in depth now that we've taken care of the bylaws. All right, great. I'm sorry, public comment, please. Adam Cohen from AIDS Healthcare Foundation, if you can please address us.
Nobody knew healthcare could be so complicated. I'll be quick. So on July 7th, just 3 days ago, the World Health Organization released a report about antibiotic drug-resistant gonorrhea and how it's on the rise globally. So there's an estimated 78 million people infected with gonorrhea on a global scale, which can infect the genitals, the rectum, the throat. Complications lead to issues like pelvic inflammatory disease or PID, ectopic pregnancy, infertility, and of course an increased risk of HIV. Decreased condom use, increased urbanization and travel, poor infection detection rates, and inadequate or failed treatment all contribute to this increase of gonorrhea, according to the WHO. So public health experts in the US and Los Angeles have been undermining the promotion of condoms, unfortunately, as one of the issues that the WHO brought up as the reason for the rise in gonorrhea. We have a growing epidemic, and we do have issues of drug resistance. And this is a serious issue because while we are a very wealthy nation and we may not have the best health care, but we do have the most health care of all countries, we cannot always rely on the antibiotics to treat people, especially the ones that are very cheap. And so we have to start coming up with new expensive ones that becomes even more problematic. I asked the LA City Health Commission to, as they put together their next report, examine the LA County Department of Public Health's current protocols and reevaluate and restructure its prevention strategies to better respond to gonorrhea and other infections by increasing the promotion of condom use, something that AHF has done for many years, even when condoms weren't considered sexy anymore. So we can't, treat our way out of this epidemic. If it's drug resistant, we can't treat it. We have to prevent it. And so just want to make sure that that's included in the record.
Thank you. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Make it.
Thank you. I don't think that needs a second. Thank you. I've never got the bylaws.